Welcome to All Elite Reviewing, the weekly podcast slash video show where we talk about everything that All Elite Wrestling has done in the week, which usually covers a lot of their shows on YouTube and their TV shows on TNT. And this week, we're actually going to talk about the pay-per-view that happened on just a week ago, this past Sunday. And I'm Shamik Ghosh.
And I'm Josh Starnes.
And let's just get right into it, okay? Because All Out was kind of a good pay-per-view, wasn't it? It was.
There are a lot of people saying this is the greatest one of the greatest pay-per-views of all time, and or one of the best U.S. pay-per-views of all time. What do you think? Is this one of the best pay-per-views of all time?
Right. You know, it's one of those knee-jerk reactions thing where you don't want to say anything's the best you've ever seen, right? You don't want to be like the like Excalibur JR on every match where it's like, oh my god, it's the best match I've ever seen. But I hesitate to this one. I just can't think. I mean, every match except the matches that weren't solid weren't supposed to be solid, in my opinion. And that's really the one match, which I'm talking about, the Paul White QT Marshall thing. That was there for people to go to the restroom. And that's
was exactly what it was supposed to be.
Yeah, and that's fine. You're not even going to be there to watch the match. So who cares what happens then, right? I mean, other than if like QT beat Paul, but even if that happened, I'd be like, whatever, that sucks, but just go away. But every other match was so awesome. So we're talking about, and not that. I mean, usually if you have a debut in a pay-per-view, it's one person, it's maybe two. You had essentially, 3.5. The CM Punk was in a real debut in the sense that you've seen it before, but you saw three really new fresh faces, not just fresh, but big faces on there. So, it was definitely, I'm seeing people, independent reviewers rate it anywhere from a 9.5 to a 10, that type of thing for this type of pay-per-view. And it was definitely, it was the most excited I've been to see it in a pay-per-view in a while, and was the most excited I've been after a pay-per-view in a while. So, it probably was the greatest pay-per-view I've ever seen, man.
It's hard. My gold standard is WrestleMania X7.
That's what I keep hearing.
I don't know if it's better than that. Which had the benefit, that had, the top of the match card is Stone Cold versus The Rock. So that's hard to top in Houston at the Astrodome. So that kind of, and it also had not the first, but the best of the giant pay-per-view tables, ladders, and chairs matches. So it's hard to say, and you know what, Christian was involved in both of those. So maybe Christian is really the measuring stick for what the great pay-per-views are.
And Matt Hardy was in the buy-in.
And Matt Hardy, that's true. But it's way up there. It is, I would say, without question, the best pay-per-view AEW has put on. That takes a lot of ground. And we've talked about that recently. After Double or Nothing, we were ranking a lot of their pay-per-views, and they, it would go up and down, but a lot of stuff, even recent stuff, was really, really high up there. But even with that, match quality,
number one. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Match quality was really high. Obviously, you have lots of interesting angles and big surprise. People in the know were expecting some or most of what happened, but even if you were expecting it, when it, there's always that, but is it going to happen? And even then, when it actually happens, it lives up to, if not surpasses, expectations. And I was watching this with my whole family. Poor Hannah made it about halfway through, and then she passed out. So I think
does she even get there as big surprise people? Like, would she get by Adam Cole going there and getting there?
No, she was gone. She was way out by then. She made it through the cage match. I think.
No, but would she even get it? Like, would she be like, "Oh, Adam Cole today," or anything like that?
No, but she would be excited that people were excited, because Cameron didn't. Cameron, he knew who Bryan Danielson was, but he had no idea who Adam Cole was. But he got the excitement that things were changing and things were happening, and they were way into that cage. And it's sort of like my measuring stick. When people talk about the cage match, whether it's as good as people say it is. I was watching my kids watch that match and go up and down with it, and the way they were yelling and jumping over things. But I felt like it was solid. This was something. You had the cage match. In some cases, you had several matches that were probably the best of their iteration that AEW has put on so far. Even starting with the 10-man tag with Best Friends and Jurassic Express versus the Hardy Family Office, which included a chicken fight in the ring. And it was just,
I was like, is that a lame
kinds of goofiness? I had to actually stop and explain to the kids what a chicken fight was, because they'd never seen one in a pool before. So they had no reference for it. And, this was the thing that I like best about about the Hardy family office Orange Cassidy feud is that it tends to be the most pro wrestling of any of the in the ring of any of the feuds that they do, like from the big stuff to the goofy stuff. There was a bit on one of their matches on Dark a few weeks ago that ended with Hardy doing some interference and Orange giving him the orange punch, and Private Party had to pick him up and basket carry him out of the arena while his head was just lolling all over the place. It was so pure pro wrestling. I adored it. And the chicken fight in the ring is very much along those lines. And we keep talking about all the big returns and surprises. The Butcher came back. They didn't even wait for the show.
The Butcher came back. He looked a lot slimmer. He looked a lot
Rehab has been going well for him, and that's good because a lot of the tag teams are coming back. I think the only tag team that's like still out is Top Flight that I want to see some more of. But
Dante Martin's stock just keeps going higher and higher.
I know.
Basically, and then
Darius is going to come back, and they're going to be going like, "Do we want to put the tag team together?" But
that's a valid concern at this point, I think. But,
no. I think you can. I think in AEW, unlike a lot of other places, you can realistically highly compete in both tag team and single, and it's not like a step down to go into the tag team division.
Right.
That is not a step down.
Decision they'd be like, either this guy's doing this or this because we're doing this with their brand, that type of thing. So,
but a lot of places, it's like we're not going to push you, so we're gonna so you can fight for the tag team titles because we're not going to push you. And
we don't want to think of you as a tag team guy. You're a singles guy, where it's like usually you're just a wrestling guy. That's really what it is, right?
Well, AEW is very much not like that. And like if you're getting pushed in the tag team division, you're getting pushed because there is every chance you're going to be in a bunch of giant main events, and your matches will be the matches people.
Yeah, because it's still you in the ring. That's what I'm saying. I mean, either
way, they don't minimize the tag team division. They don't go like, oh, he can't make it as a star. He's just a tag.
It's hard to minimize the division that puts on the best match of the pay-per-view. So.
Right. If not the year for the second year in a row. So I don't know if we want to jump there right yet, but obviously
we can start with Miro.
You know what? This may have been Miro's best match. It was definitely his best match as TNT champion. I liked his match against Darby for the championship. May have been a little bit better, but this was really good.
I agree with you. It's the second best match he's ever championship versus against Darby. It was more competitive than I thought it was going to be. Yeah. They put, it's Eddie, so there can be some dramatic elements that they're going to put in there that's going to work. And so it did with Eddie. I never really thought he was going to beat him though. That's the one thing is they never really made me feel like, oh my God, Eddie might actually win this. But that's hard to do with Miro, right? So
Well, it's the same thing that affected the World Championship match and a lot of the women's title match, and that's sort of the way it is. Because AEW, for better or for worse, I tend to think it's for better. But like the way they tell their stories, they don't put in stupid swerves you can't see coming. Most of the time, where somebody wins the championship match that you don't think they're going to win, it's because they shouldn't have. So it surprises you, and then you stop and think about it and go like, "Oh, that's stupid. What are you going to do now?"
Yeah, but even then, like we've talked about this before. But remember that three-way title match with Pac and Kenny and Cassidy? I actually, for a split second, believed that one of those people was going to win the title.
I did. Night. They sold me, and it's really hard.
I never got that moment.
Yeah, and there were some of those in a couple of the other matches, and this one didn't really have it. They did, however, tell a really good story that they set up. Yeah, they set up very well from the beginning with Kingston saying, "Your neck's your weakness. We've seen that from you wrestling Fuego to wrestling Jungle Boy to everybody else. Your neck into wrestling Darius. Your neck is your weakness. And I'm going to aim for it, and I'm going to beat you." And that's the story they told, and it worked really well.
Miro's a video game guy, right? So it's like almost like if he's a boss and you just see his neck flashing the whole time. Mm-hmm. It's like, how is he punch him in the neck? But
he's like,
I wonder how long they're going to keep that going. And I have a feeling that they're going to keep this going until Miro eventually loses the title. Is that the neck being a kind of a thing?
I think so. Well, it sounded like they're from the promos. We'll get to this in Dynamite. From the promos in Dynamite, that they're setting this up for a rematch, probably for the Arthur Ashe Stadium show, which is going to be their biggest TV show that they have ever done.
I'm fine with that.
They're going to want big. I expect lots of pay-per-view quality matches at the Arthur Ashe show. So I won't be surprised if every title is defended on that show. I mean, they're going to have like 19,000 people in the building.
You have the Malachi Cody blow off during the Arthur Ashe. I don't know if that's the one I'm looking forward to a lot. Because even though Malachi wasn't on the pay-per-view, which is a damn shame, in which we might have to start getting used to.
Well, there's just too much stuff. But you know what? They gave him a promo on the pay-per-view just to get his face out there. and to remind us that he's fighting Dustin on Wednesday, and you want to see that because Malachi is hot right now, and we want to keep everybody on that.
Those faces and getting cheered in the whole time.
And getting cheered. Well,
so badass. I like it so much better than the entrance I saw in NXT. Because NXT is kind of a Lecter type of thing, right?
Yeah.
This one is so cool. Like he sits and then there's like there's a spotlight in different places. Like it's almost like an apparition. It's awesome.
It takes up a lot of time, so you can't always do it. But it was really good.
His old one also was long too, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. That's why they didn't always do it. But especially when he was, you want to talk about being thrown into tag teams, especially when he was thrown into a tag team with Ricochet. And then it was like, well, how on earth did we get these guys in the ring?
Although the one thing, I was making fun of Taker, but I actually appreciated Taker's effort. The one time I ever did see it live, I was in the line for the bathroom and I heard the gong. And by the time it made it to my seat, he still wasn't in the ring. Right. So, that's actually a little bit of convenience for fans that maybe at home you don't appreciate so much. But,
well, I also think that they did that more because it was long when he was young, but it wasn't that long. And it got progressively longer as he got older because he wasn't going to be in the ring that long. So we're going to make sure that you get your full Taker, presentation. But it's not going to be a very long match.
You're like, Taker, good job on slowing down your entrance. He's like, slowing down. That's what I'm doing. That's definitely can walk faster than that. Yeah, you're right.
Yes, I'm doing this entirely on purpose.
Right. So the show's going to be good, and that's funny because that's the one that we thought that Daniel Bryan was actually going to show up at. And instead, he surprised us all with this one, so that was very cool.
There's been some rumors about it, but but it made for a good show. Is it, and Arthur Ashe probably didn't need it. I know there are a lot of it is about concerns about whether there's going to be a lockdown in New York before they even get to the show. And let's not put things off and then not be able to debut them. Let's just go ahead and do it now. And,
right. And also,
it worked.
Some of these things, like he's even Andrade versus Pac, which was supposed to be on the card for All Out, which I was so disappointed at. I mean, was it actual travel concerns or is it part of the whole? Because it seems like after the match,
from what I've heard, travel concerns is just the cover for something more for that one of them, and they won't say who one of them couldn't get medically cleared. And exactly what it was that was keeping them, we don't know, and they're not saying, and nobody's saying.
I don't think it was COVID because the turnaround time is quick enough for that.
It sounds, for everyone has said, it's very much similar to Sasha Banks at SummerSlam, wherein something that they won't say what is keeping one of the participants from getting medically cleared, so the match isn't going to cover yet. But they did not, when they knew that was going to happen, though, they didn't keep pushing the match was going to be on the card right up until the second was supposed to happen. They said right away, nope, we're gonna do this on Rampage and make sure you watch.
Which is fun because that was basically the whole Rampage show in my opinion.
Yeah, I think it worked out better for them putting on Rampage because this show was so good. It would have gotten lost.
It must
and
have
people wouldn't be
so
talking about it. Yeah. And people, now people are talking about, I remember now how good Andrade is. If it had been on this show, people wouldn't have forgotten about it because it would have happened right before the cage match and nobody would remember.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we get lost in the stuff exactly. So so you have the Miro Eddie match, which apparently they're going to keep doing that feud, which should be good. Like they're two very good dramatic actors that I think are going to be, and Eddie's getting better in the ring, so I think that's going to be fine.
And it had an all-time great tweet from Miro after the match where he tweeted out, "Consider your nuts redeemed."
Yeah. That's another thing. So I guess because Eddie already has merch now that says "Redeem these nuts."
That was some quick turnaround too. What was that? 3 days? 3 days and they had that shirt made?
I mean, one of AEW's, I guess people call it criticism. To me, it's not a criticism, it's a compliment that they're a t-shirt company. Yeah. So I'm like, I like t-shirts, asshole. So
people will buy it versus, you keep hearing guys in WWE can't get a new shirt authorized, so they're never selling as much merch as they could. AEW's, they're making sure that their guys are making merchandise sales and that they're making mercise sales. They're not just laying on guaranteed TV money.
Sports team, you like wearing the gear of that sports team alike. I mean, it's just, there's not the saying that's like saying any basketball team, football team, or baseball team is just like a t-shirt company or a jersey company rather than.
I don't know if you looked at the. Right. I don't know if you checked out the merchandise line at the Houston show. I looked at it once and it was longer than the line for anything else. And I heard people were standing in it for the whole show and still never got anything. So, there's demand there.
With the thing. So yeah.
there's definitely demand there.
Yeah.
Nope. I'll just buy it online and wait for it to arrive in a box.
But yeah, I like the women's battle royal. I thought was really good too. There was a lot of spots that I thought they were good. They shoehorned a lot of people in, which isn't fine. Sky Blue I thought was interesting. She seemed to be very popular.
She's a
from the
hometown
local
hero,
crowd in
so a lot of
Chicago.
people like her. You know what? I think what this people kind of
That Lucy
give the
Josh?
battle royale.
Oh, there you are. Okay.
I'm here. People kind of give the battle royal grief because they basically say like no battle royal can be good. But I hear that some people talk about how much they love the Royal Rumble. So I don't agree that no battle. And I think this, this one had a bit here and there, but it's not like, most of the grief I hear them say is like, well, you don't get to see each individual person's entrance and what they do when they get in because it's somebody else is coming right behind them. Like, so what? They get in the ring, they do their stuff. You know what? You get all of your best people in one place and you set up a bunch of they set up like a dozen stories for the women's division that's going to give them 6 months worth of stuff. You got Nyla Rose versus Jade Cargill. You got Bunny and Penelope versus Tay Conti and Anna Jay, which they're already going to start running back on TV. You've got Ruby Soho and Thunder Rosa. You've got Mort Diamante and Big Swole, which led right into their dark matches. You've got Thunder Rosa and Riho against some of the and it really showed how deep their women's roster has gotten, and they didn't even really pull out many of their homegrown talents that have been on Dark and Elevation and the occasional Dynamite. There, I think the only one who was really there was Red Velvet, who's turned herself into regular television person. She's not just on the it's nowadays it's more unusual if she's on Dark than it is that she's on Dynamite. Not as many others have been elevated.
It must be the top 5 at least.
Oh yeah, for sure. So, but you can see now how deep the women's division is and how many people they can just go to and get good matches out of. It's not like we're going to bring people in.
And then it got deeper with the addition of Ruby Soho, which I mean, frankly speaking, I'm a huge fan of Rancid. I love Time Bomb. I love Ruby Soho. So hearing the song was awesome. Like, and having
she got a great pop. People were chanting Ruby Soho before she even came out. She had a great jacket, and she said it was like the best reaction she has ever gotten from a crowd, and the first time she's ever heard her name chanted.
She came in and kicked ass. Yeah. Came in a bunch of ass. I'm very excited to see what she can do in AEW.
And it was just
right into the title picture.
It was just the right ending for that. That it puts her right into the title picture. It gives her a bunch of matches to have, a new feud for Britt Baker with someone that she's never even talked to before. So something fresh.
We talked about that last time. Remember, it's like, what does Britt really do? Like, it feels like she's treading water until we get to Thunder Rosa, and this is where you stick Ruby and Soho in.
Yep. And you can have that dragged out for a little while, and when it's done, you can pick up one of these other feuds that was happening with the other women and do those for a little bit, and then you don't have to. Britt doesn't have to be doing something all the time. Then you come back to her, and we can make sure that Thunder Rosa rematch happens on a pay-per-view, which is where it needs to happen. And, but not Full Gear, because you want to give Full Gear should be somebody else. You want to give Britt a whole bunch of time before you go back to the Thunder Rosa match. Thunder Rosa shouldn't happen before next year.
Right. I mean, it's almost like the same trajectory for whatever Thunder Rosa and Britt have is almost what Kenny Omega and Paige should have, or Adam Page should have.
Right, exactly.
But let's get through a bunch of people and then make that a big deal. By the time we a year later, basically down the road.
There weren't any like crazy botches or anything. There was some sitting around in covers and wailing or waiting because you got too many people in the ring. The only goofy thing that I saw or heard of was Riho got eliminated by accident early when she went under the ropes, and her ref got confused and marked her as eliminated. And even Jamie Hayter broke character for a second to wave him off and go like, no, she's not, but it was too late. And Rio's even been tweeting about it. She's been tweeting like, I don't know, but like Rio's been out tweeting about it. It's like, over the refs, no, laces out.
Okay, so that's another thing. Okay, that brings us up with the refs. That was my one kind of weird thing with this whole pay-per-view, is that for a company where we talk about AEW and I criticize, but I love AEW. I don't really like WWE at all anymore. But my one big gripe with them is that their refs methodology is very inconsistent.
Very inconsistent.
And then all of a sudden at the pay-per-view, they start doing their jobs, and it's weird.
Sometimes, They do it like when it's really needed for the story, they do their jobs, and then the rest of the time, they're like, no, whatever.
Stark contrast to what happens usually. Then I'm just like I know this is what you're supposed to do, but you never do this shit.
Yeah.
oh, the turnbuckle's still exposed, and now it's a big deal, and you can't like let the guy hit the turnbuckle. Like,
now I must cover it up. You guys stop what you're doing. I'm gonna.
This never happened, and they've exposed turnbuckles in matches, and I get, but it's not wrong. Like that is kind of what the referee's supposed to do, but he's never done it before, so that's the thing. And then that also kept happening during the show, like where the referee up, and you're kind of like, okay, like I can't bitch about this too much because you're doing the right thing, but also you should have done it before.
Yeah, but all those matches where you just let like 12 guys in the ring and they run around and you wave your hands like there's nothing you can do.
And no one's counting
now,
anything, or so that's kind of thing that maybe my slight knock on the whole pay-per-view was that whole thing. It's like, and it's not even a knock, right? Because it's
it was really good reffing almost the whole time. Even if they gave Ruby Soho gave Bryce Remsburg a big hug at the end, but you know what? It was heartwarming, so I could go with it. But yeah, sometimes it's just, and it probably helps, especially with this pay-per-view, and we'll get to it, that the Young Bucks match was a cage match. But before we get that far, because we jumped over, and it's just hard not to do this, we jumped over the women's title match, which I will say is the best women's title match at a pay-per-view that they have yet done.
Yeah, because I didn't think there was a good story building up to this really that much.
Well, Chris Statlander was the number one contender. It's the thing that I like about the rankings. People give the rankings grief, but it's supposed to be a sports-based storyline. It doesn't always have to be, well, we're in a feud. It may as well be, all right, I have beaten everyone. I am the number one contender. So now you've got to face me. Now they had set up all that Nyla Rose stuff through July. So they only had like 3 weeks with Statlander. So they can only do a little bit here and there. And they were bringing in Jamie Hayter at the same time. And it feels like sometimes they want to get Statlander over, but they don't know entirely how to do that with her as a persona. So she doesn't get like mic time or anything like that. It's more like,
because they alien matches.
That's why. She's getting better and better at it. I know it used to be rough. Yeah. But in this case, for the pay-per-view match, it didn't need it, and they worked really well together. Statlander had I won't say infamous, but this is her second big pay-per-view match, because she had a pay-per-view title match against Nyla Rose during her reign at the 2020 Revolution show, and it did not go well. It was a really ambitious match that neither one of them were quite able to carry off. And in this case, this was also a very ambitious match that they carried off to a T. And I think it shows a lot of growth for both of them. And I loved the fired up Orange Cassidy spot, because it was so out of character. That was
yelling, and you're like,
whoa, it must be important. He's yelling at her to get in the ring, in the ring.
Like a loss in the family, like is he going through something?
Out of character is serious business, and I won't explain what that means, but if you know, you know.
But the one thing, again, kind of like the Miro match, I never really thought Statlander was ever going to win, but I will say the match itself impressed me because of the moves they were doing to each other in the ring. So
I didn't think
even though
she was ever going to win.
Happened. I really enjoyed what I was watching.
But it's like I didn't think she was ever going to win, but watching the match, it was a lot like the title match too. But watching the course of the match and the story they told in the course of the match was really fun, and especially the last little bit, they really cranked it up. Everything hit. Everybody loved the Panama Sunrise spot. They worked that out to a T, and then having her not tap out but pass out in the lockjaw.
Was it Panama Sunrise the one from the ropes?
It's the one from the second rope. She jumps down from the second. It looks like a code red, which actually just jumps. She jumps down off the ropes, hits the ramp, and then jumps.
It's like almost Avalanche Destroyer, but it's not.
It's almost. It's like a. I want to say like a half Avalanche Destroyer, but that's not what it is, because it has a stop before you. It's like a really cool move that if you think about it for 5 seconds, it makes no sense, because why would you jump to the floor to the ring and then do it? But whatever. Well, but it's cool.
Let's put in the video game, which, by the way, I did see footage of that. That looks awesome.
That's really coming together. I hope it comes out next year, because it's really coming together really well. Oh, I'm definitely getting that. And if they have an online component, I am beating the shit out of you.
It doesn't matter. It makes a story fine. Let's give the people what they want. We'll have one episode of AER. Let's just be on Twitch. It's like, I can rage quit all the time. But But yeah, no. So that match was extremely well done. And it seems like they're really trying to get Rebel and Jamie over with Britt. Which apparently Rebel's a wrestler now because she's doing a lot more wrestling than
Rebel's always been a wrestler. Hopefully, they don't let her do it too much. I mean, nowadays they use her in a comedy spot, which is about the most they should do. I mean, yeah, she was a wrestler in TNA years ago, and she was okay then. She's okay-ish now.
Comedy spot. I like her. She
can do that. But Jamie Hayter has a real promise as an actual wrestler.
She's one of those people, like when she first came back, I was kind of like, okay, all these other women have been here and you just come back, like, and you take the spot. But then you see her in the ring, you're like, other than that Red Velvet match, which we still don't know what's going on. But then again, it wasn't Charlotte and Nia, right? So
we've seen worse recently.
So, that's one thing when she came back. But I was like, okay, she can really, especially there aren't too many power women in the AEW right now. Basically, Nyla, Jade. And that's about it.
Statlander and Hayter
is kind of.
Oh no, Statlander. I mean, we can talk about it. She had as much as we give her grief, but where she picked up both Rebel and Hayter at the same time and slammed them. Yeah.
So you basically add another power girl in there, which every other woman is not a power woman. So that's like 5 maybe. So yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, it gives them a nice balance, and she's got a lot of experience from her Rev Pro year, so that she can bring a lot of stuff to the ring, and you create new, fresh matchups, which the needs.
When I first saw her, she didn't seem big. Like when you see her on the intramp, you're like, oh, like she's looking at normal
until
size.
She's next to the other women.
Everybody else, you're like, oh, girl, okay.
She's like, oh wait, she towers. She's unless she's standing next to Jade Cargill, she doesn't look like. You're like, oh, she's way big.
Yeah, which Jade also did a lot of stuff during that Royal match.
This is the most. I mean, of course, her matches tend to be short for reasons, but the fact that they put her in there and they gave her a bunch of stuff to do and storyline stuff to do, it gives you the feeling that they are more and more confident every day that she's going to be able to carry off being.
It's almost like you have Britt and Thunder Rosa, and then maybe in the future you're gonna have Jade versus Ruby or something like that, or
something like that. Those will all be good.
So many combinations now with all these people that
Jade versus Thunder Rosa, Jade versus Chris Statlander. You got lots and lots of options. I thought it was very, very telling also, and it makes sense that they put it down to Thunder Rosa as the other person at the end. Like when they're like at the for the big stuff at the end, we need 2 people that we know can do it. So it's going to be
the last 3 were Thunder Rosa and Ruby, right?
Right.
Because I remember thinking at that point, I was like, these are the right 3 people that have to end this thing. Yeah.
Right. You could have swapped out Jade Cargill for Nyla, but Nyla is, even though Nyla's still kind of green, but she's still going to be more capable for the stuff that they need her to do than Jade.
Jade's greener than Nyla, so yeah.
Nyla still has more ring time and is going to be able to get through, especially the monster stuff they need to do. And Nyla was champ before.
That counts. Okay.
Yeah, I would think so. And it goes to show you they're still going to, that Nyla's not losing a spot just because we brought all these people in. But as good as that champ
match yet?
As good as that. No, I want to talk about the one that everyone wants to talk about: Paul White versus Keith. No, it's time to talk about the cage match.
About it. And like I said, it served its purpose. I think that's all I need to say about it.
I'll say a little bit more. I won't say a lot. There's not like a lot that needs to be.
I'll go use the restroom while you do that.
You do that, and cage match. I mean, everybody knew these guys have put on magic every time they've been in the ring. They haven't had, this combination hasn't been in the ring for 2 years since the first All Out when they had a crazy ladder match. They've kept them apart for a reason. They've had individual matches with each other and sort of mix and match tag matches with Pac with each other. So you got like hints of it, but you knew that if they went into a cage, it was going to be crazy. The Young Bucks had to live up to having, the best tag match of last year. You knew they were going to want to top that. And especially if they were going to be losing the titles. And I think this one had the double energy to it, in that no one really knew what was going to happen, and it's the only match where nobody knew. We called it. I was pretty sure. I wouldn't have been like crazy surprised. I would have been like, that's the wrong decision, but I wouldn't have been crazy surprised if the Bucks retained. But most people were like can make a really strong case for the Lucha Brothers, can make a really strong case for the Young Bucks.
But that's
I don't know. So especially
what's going to happen?
There was like that one near fall at the end where they got the Meltzer driver on Penta, or no, they got the BTE
Sounds like
trigger
that.
on Penta, and everyone was like, "Oh, this is over. This is it. The Bucks are going to retain." Everybody on Earth bit on that, and the crowd when
broke up the
when the
pin, right?
when the pin, yeah, that's when Phoenix came in, broke up the pin, and the crowd like went in. I mean, they were hot for the whole match, but they went crazy. I remember the last time I heard Near Fall, everybody went on
entrances, right? Because Lucha Brothers come in with this like Quetzalcoatl, like Aztec type of headgear that looks sweet as hell. Like I thought it was a great look when they came in, and of course the Spanish rapping and all this stuff was cool. That reminded me of the Rey Mysterio pay-per-view introduction back in the day.
Yeah,
and then it's funny because like my friend who's not into wrestling that much, his fiance is. We were watching the pay-per-view like online with each other, and then he saw Nick Jackson's face, and he's like, "What is up with Nick Jackson's face?" And I was like, holy shit, I think he's doing Hogan NWO.
I think he is doing Hogan. I think that is what he was doing.
I fucking hate Hulk Hogan so much. So it's like one of those things. It's like to see someone like, man, you're like such a good heel. But like you're dressing like Hulk Hogan of all people. Like that makes me hate you so much right now.
That's the goal.
Yeah.
And for people who haven't seen, who've only ever seen like Hell in a Cell matches and WWE cage matches and haven't been exposed to much. I mean, and this is AEW's only second ever cage match. It's not something they do on a regular basis. They don't pull out gimmick as much as they get grief for it. They don't actually pull out gimmick matches that often. And they did it the way it's supposed to be done. Once those doors closed, they did not open again. There was no interference for
there was
all. Well, we can, whether you could consider interference or not. No person came into the ring and messed with the ref. There was no ref bump the entire time. There was no, nobody, there was no shenanigans. It was a match between. It wasn't a tag team. We call it the tag team titles. There were no tags at all at any point in this match. It was a tornado match of all four guys in the ring all the time at the same time, unless someone had been wedged between the ring and the cage or lawn darted into the side. There was a giant cage that you couldn't win by getting out, so nobody even tried to get to the doors. They just wrestled the whole time.
They did climb on the fence a bunch, though.
Yes, they climbed on the fence. They climbed to the top, mainly so that they could jump off the top onto people below, which is stuff. Right. And then, of course, at one time, the greatest stooge in existence, Brandon Cutler, came down and threw a bag into the ring to reveal a thumbtack laced Nike that everybody took at least once. And Penta was bleeding so bad towards the
end. And it was a good touch because you didn't think this match was going to get all weapony. And it was a good way to keep it weapony without keeping it like the weapon. Like it's not like the barbed wire bat or anything. It was just a weapon.
It's just a weapon. It wasn't one that was that should end the match. It was one that was it would suck taking.
Well, I would argue that when the managed to get control of it, that's when the final tide turned.
That's true. Yeah. And their plan backfired on them. But this is definitely. I mean, people have rated a couple of New Japan matches higher. It's hard this year because there's no crowds in New Japan.
The brothers like doing the pile drivers on the apron, looking at each other and doing it.
They've done that before, but it was still really good.
That was awesome.
I think for my money, it's the best wrestling match I've seen this year. A lot of people really there was a Shingo Takagi Will Ospreay match earlier this year, and there was a Stardom match earlier this year that people went crazy for, and those matches were both really good, but they were like in giant rooms with no one in them and no one could clap or yell. So like versus this where people were just going nuts the whole time. And it was a title change where it could go either way. So people were going to be like, I don't know what's going to happen. Right up until the very end, nobody really knew what was going to happen. And,
because like I said, during that whole sequence when they did the Meltzer press and everything, and then I was like, well, fuck, there it goes. I thought Lucha Brothers might get it today, but I guess they're not. And then that's the thing, they kept me guessing, and I liked that the build also wasn't an obvious build in the sense that for storyline purposes, one of these people needs to win. It wasn't that way. It's one of those perfect wrestling matches to me where it's like I'm just lost in the air of mystery about the whole thing, and the match also kept that up. So I mean, I was just. It's one of those things where there's a lot of matches where after you see it, you're like, wow, that was a good match. But during this, at least like 7 times during the match, I'm like, wow, this is a fucking good match. So
the last time I felt like that was during that tag match from last year, where like when I was sitting there and watching it, I was going
right where Hangman and Kenny beat Young Bucks, right?
Yeah.
Which one do you think is better?
I think the one from last year is better. some storytelling stuff because you had all the relationship between the guys, and it would
and
it would stop. Yeah, well, lots of different stuff, like and the things they were getting mad at each other, like they were ripping the athletic tape off of Kenny's shoulder, and then like Matt would stop and realize what he'd done, and there was like a lot of bits where they stopped to play up story elements, whereas this was just chaos and insanity from the word go and never stopped.
Yeah,
so they were different in that respect. I think the other one was a little bit better.
Yeah, I enjoyed this match a lot, and then
the FTR match from last year was also amazing, and
without Pac there too, so that's also something. Yeah.
Yep. And they did it, so that was great. But for the downside being that nothing was going to be able to follow that. And
that's I actually even had that comment right after it happened. I was like, how the hell do you follow that? What match did it end up following that?
The Battle Royale. It was the Casino Battle Royale followed that.
It was fine. That's actually a good match.
I mean, which it needed to be. It needed to be that or Paul White, because you would not want to put CM Punk and Darby Allin after that. You just, no matter how much people were looking forward to seeing CM Punk's first match in 7.5 or whatever it is years, you would not want to try to follow that. You needed a break.
Right, exactly. You need a breather in a sense.
Yep.
And
the Battle Royale's the right. It makes me wonder what on earth, when the Battle Royal was the buy-in, what on earth was going to follow that? Where were they going to put that?
Oh, yeah.
Would you put Pac and Andrade after that? Because that would suck. Maybe, I don't know, or the TNT title. Like, I don't know. Nothing that anything you put there is going to get buried. So it's for the best that the lineup was what it was. It was also at this point that I was sitting there going, well, did they cancel the Paul White match and didn't tell anyone? Where they don't have anything left.
Don't worry, they're still going to get around to it, which a lot of people made a big deal about. They called it a co-main event, which I'm like, it's not. That you're looking at.
I mean, it's the semi-main event only in the fact that it's coming up right before the main event. But the CM Punk match is the semi-main event.
That match just went on right before.
There's the main event, and then the Punk match is the semi-main event. And I mean, that's it.
Go to the restroom during the CM Punk Darby Allin match? No, dude. You need to get up and go take a shit or piss or something. So after that gets done, then you go while they do Paul White QT bullshit.
Well, what they said was, and we'll get it, and it made more sense than that. I was texting you, and it was happening. Like, I cannot believe they're going to put Paul White on after CM Punk. This is insane. What they said on.
This shouldn't have been on TV, but I mean, like I said, I guess
that's fine. If you're gonna have one of your old legends come out and do something, you're better off in a pay-per-view, because you're not going to do it more than a couple times a year. Better off doing it on a pay-per-view where you can get the most mileage out of it than just some random episode of TV.
Consider all the fucking, because it wasn't just the last match, right? It was a lot of post-curricular stuff.
This was the thing, right? And this is what I heard afterwards, which I guess makes more sense. That the reason that the Paul White match was put where it was to be a time spacer, because no one knew how long the CM Punk match was going to be. It had a time limit set for it, but no one knew if it was going to go run long or not, or what he would want to do once he got in the ring. And they weren't going to have a ref go up to CM Punk and say, you got to go home now. So that wasn't going to happen. So, but they have the show was going to end at 4 hours no matter what. And obviously there's a lot of stuff that was going to be happening at the end of the Christian Cage Kenny Omega match that there had to be time for.
So you don't want to your seat for. So yeah.
Right. So they had to put something in between CM Punk and Kenny Omega that they could make as long or as short as necessary in order to make sure that they finished with the right moment happening at the 4 hour mark. And they did.
But Paul White QT thing was going to be put after a big match anyways, right? Because that's like you
said. Well, if I had been doing it, I'd been like, well, put it at first or second or something, just get it out of the way as a palate cleanser where you're trying to get people up to speed before you go crazy. But definitely in the first half, it makes sense what they're talking about when you don't know if you're going where timing is that essential, and you don't know what is, because it can't go anywhere else than it did. Because if you go in before any earlier, then it's not helping you, say, because you still don't know whether you're going to be running along by the time the main event starts, and you don't want to end up like Dynamite, where your main event gets 4 minutes, but because people don't like it when that happens. But we'll get to that. But and especially on a pay-per-view, and especially when they have a lot of stuff planned for the main event match. So it was what it needed to be. QT Marshall and the Nightmare Factory got their asses kicked by Paul White. In about 60 seconds, he took maybe 1 or 2 bits of heat.
We talked about this match longer than the match actually happened.
Yeah. So, well, what it needed, all the Nightmare, they had just enough guys for Paul White to beat up all of them. he made sure to give everybody the shh so he could have some really loud chops. And I would not relish being QT Marshall when that happened. And
Right.
and then the choke slam from hell. It was exactly what it needed. And who doesn't like seeing QT Marshall get choke slammed off the top rope?
If only QT Marshall had like a shirt on during the match to protect him from like the shot. And it made a difference. But it's funny that we've been talking around it. We've even again, it's funny that we spent so much time talking about why the QT Marshall match needs to happen when it happened. Yep. But there was a match before that. There was the Darby Allin CM Punk match that belonged to, or I guess 2 weeks awaited.
So you are the big CM Punk fan and who was most into seeing him come back. So for you, how was his first match back?
I thought it was, stylistically, the thing that I thought about the match, I guess, first of all, let's start with the appearance. He went with what he called the long boys. He traditionally used to wear trunks, and now he wore long tights. I'm like, okay. He actually made a comment on Twitter, I think, one time when he was talking about like, oh, I got to work out in my basement to get ready to wrestle my underwear. So I kind of had a feeling that he might go with longer tights this time or something. So he came up with new tights. But stylistically with this match, I mean, it was what I expected in the sense that I knew it was going to be even because that's how CM Punk was going to play it. He wasn't going to come out and squash Darby. They had to make it look like they were matched up evenly against each other, which they did a great job of doing that. I thought it really just seemed, again, I never really thought Darby was going to beat CM Punk, but at the time it was nice to see them have such a competitive match against each other. And also it was a lot slower than CM Punk's normal matches. Yeah. That's one thing that really stuck out. It almost felt like normal WWE back in the day, which these days, which would be very slow for AEW. But it still worked. But I did notice that it was a lot slower than normal.
I was worried a little bit early on that they might lose the crowd. And, for actually looking back on it for this first match, no, that wasn't going to happen. But I don't know if they can do this kind of thing too much more, because if they do it in the future, it will lose the crowd because I think people were expecting it to be faster than it was, and it did start out very slow, let's say classic wrestling match. I mean, they were on the mat working on a hammerlock for at least a minute and a half. And that's not something you see in AEW very often.
Wasn't I just talking that to you about? I remember asking you about that the other week where I was like, yeah, there's rest holds. Like WWE so many rest holds, and AEW doesn't use that many rest holds. So that's one of those things we saw back in again, which maybe he is working his way back into shape. So that's why you need to the match.
And maybe that was the story he was telling.
Bad match by means. It was just a little slower than I thought it would be, but I didn't like that. That doesn't knock any points off for me for the match.
It was it actually in some ways it reminded me of the Winter is Coming Moxley Omega championship match, where definitely the story they were telling in a lot of ways they were doing a classic wrestling match, whereas AEW has the trope. I don't think it's entirely fair, but definitely is considered a cliche of that they're just spot fest, that people come out, they start going a million miles an hour and they never stop until the end of the match. Whereas, and they should be, taking some more time in storytelling. And, in this match was very much we're going to start out slow and we're going to build and build and build and build until we start doing a lot of stuff. And it really kicks into high gear with the first GTS that knocks Darby out of the ring, and you actually end up waiting on a 10 count for him to come back.
Right. And, which you're like, wow, we're going to see the first 10 count in AEW history of the pay-per-view, right?
Right. They have actually done one before, but not very often. I think they've done like a couple of them, but not very often. And I will be amazed if they ever do one on a pay-per-view. Right. That would be like, no, maybe one day, maybe they might do a dual count out to set up a rematch, but I would be amazed. But
one of those things where you saw CM Punk give it all, but it also allows Darby to get back in the match, so
exactly.
And so I thought it was well planned out. I think so if I heard you right, was this not a planned match? Did they basically call the match with each other the whole time in the ring?
I don't know. I bet you most of it was planned. CM Punk has stated in the past his preference to call matches in the ring. I wouldn't be surprised if it was a mixture of both. I mean, they almost certainly planned out, the major milestones, the GTS out of the ring, the sitting up to avoid the coffin drop. I'm sure all of those were planned. Probably the big dive, because you've got to be prepared for that big dive. But a lot of the other stuff, especially in that first half where they're fighting over holds, I bet you they're calling that. That was what I felt.
Shit, help me remember this. This match was planned out. It was a match, the 1-2-3 Kid versus who?
It was 1-2-3 Kid versus I want to say it was Bret Hart.
Yes, it was Bret Hart versus 1-2-3 Kid.
Yeah.
They did a lot. They did at least 5 spots from that match.
I think Punk said afterwards that he was paying like direct tribute to that match.
Right. I saw like the tweet where like they set it up, and I was like, holy shit, they did do 5 spots exactly from that match. The coffin drop where he falls on him on the top. There are a lot of like the facial expressions. They did the exact same thing, like what Bret and 1-2-3 Kid were doing.
Yeah.
Which is like, wow, like good for Sean Waltman getting this type of like,
I know. No. Somebody's gonna get X-Pac heat. Keep him away.
So that's another good thing about this match is that it's such a good homage to like classic wrestling, and I love Bret. That's really cool that they did. And actually, it kind of surprised me that Sean Waltman used to be that good of a wrestler back in the day. But
oh no, he's really good. The X-Pac heat thing is undeserved, and it really is. When he was 1-2-3 Kid, it was almost like looking in the future a little bit, because he was like way smaller than everyone else he was in the ring with, but he could do really good stuff. And even when he came back as X-Pac, I don't think I've ever seen a 6 match, but even when he came back as X-Pac, more often than not, like the ring work was good. It's just that number one, he never really had a gimmick that clicked. So his entire gimmick was being part of the clique. From when he was 1-2-3 Kid went to DX. And so when he came back, like it was all about being part of DX. And as DX got less and less popular and gradually fell apart, there was just nothing for him. It was like, all right, what is X-Pac? Who is X? Yeah. And then the China stuff. Well, that was all tied into, that was all part of like DX falling apart. I mean, DX basically, they kept it going there's no reason for DX without, we're getting to a digression, but there's like no reason for DX without Shawn Michaels. And once he's going, like, it was basically kept going in order to give Hunter something, because he didn't have a gimmick without DX either, and they needed to get him something. And especially once he figured out he was better off as a heel, there was no reason to have it around at all. And to one degree or another, everybody else found a landing place, but everybody had to had to answer the question, who am I without DX? And when the question was, who is X-Pac without DX, there was no answer.
Crickets.
Crickets. There's just crickets.
Yeah, so that's enough. So this, in a lot of sense, this was a very classic match. And but from what I've seen, it wasn't terribly poorly received, which I would wonder a lot.
No, everybody seemed to like it. Now that could be that everybody really wants to like it and is willing it to greatness, because they want CM Punk's first match back to be good, if not great. Yeah. And it was good. It was solid. It was better. It was very good. And I guess now on a pay-per-view with a lot of really good matches.
With CM Punk and Darby, they're moving on to different feuds now, because they're doing different things.
It's now. One and done.
Yeah. So this isn't
like what it needed to be.
Yeah.
Oh, you know what? We skipped right over something big. We jumped right into that. We skipped right over, speaking of moving on to things, MJF versus Chris Jericho for Jericho's career.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Had their rematch.
Didn't love the match.
You didn't love it?
Didn't love it.
Not even the restart?
Better.
Not even the restart? I think the problem...
It's not even the restart. The restart I have no problem with, because it protects the character a little bit. Yeah. But apparently this is the blow-off match. Jericho.
Yeah, this is the blow-off match. This is it. That's the end of the feud.
Odd thing to do for this type of thing, but I'm okay.
If you were going to do the blow-off match had to be at a pay-per-view. I think that they would have been better off. I get why.
But also, it's a blow-off because he's already beat him 3 times, So it's
it's the end of the feud. He like saved his career. He beat him when it mattered. That's why I think probably personally, I feel like they pulled it along a little bit too far, in that I think they should have done the 5 labors of Jericho and then the match against, and then he gets through all 5 labors and he gets the match against MJF and he wins. And then you can have that, and that can be it. And then it's done. And then by having I'm going to wrestle MJF and lose clean and then wrestle again, it's pulling it a bit too far, but I liked it. I think the big problem it had, everybody's kind of mentioned it. Is that once it came out, and Jericho was saying, if I lose, I'm going to never wrestle again. People went, oh, I know exactly how this match is going to end. There's no way on earth Jericho is going to lose.
I thought the broadcast.
What is this?
We've been doing a lot of broadcasting on this, on the shows, so I thought it was a nice stipulation.
It was a nice stipulation, but at the same time, I think a lot of people took that to being Jericho is going to win.
style. It was a match itself that I thought was just slow. Like, and just like the
it was
pacing
slow.
that good.
You know,
it wasn't that dramatic.
I don't know about that. They did some stuff. I mean, they did some stuff, especially
that's better than effect, but yeah.
Especially MJF did some stuff that hang on a second.
Sure.
Here, give me 1 second. I'll have to edit this out. I gotta go downstairs for a second. Just one second.
All right.
Hey, Cameron. Get the Cameron. Oh, Maya.
Okay, I'm back.
Okay. So what I was saying is that we saw MJF do a lot of. I know people have been giving like Jericho a lot of grief, saying he looking at this match like, oh, he's so slow. His code breaker was slow and his line saw was slow. I don't know. I didn't get that picture seeing him at
good.
like the stuff I saw him doing that. Yeah, I mean the stuff I saw him doing in Houston. I mean he looks good, especially for somebody who's 50 years old. He actually looks really good in the ring. His Hurricanrana off the top ropes is really good. But the thing I took was that MJF was doing a lot of stuff that he doesn't normally do. I mean, he did a moonsault off the apron onto the floor. It's like stuff that you don't ever see him do. And he did like the heat seeker over the top rope and a lot of stuff you don't. He showed off a lot of skill. So maybe I don't know. Some people aren't as into the end of the feud as I was. I have been carrying along this whole feud the whole time, and I've been very interested in seeing the end of it. And I really liked his entrance with the guitarist. The crowd kind of got lost, but that's okay.
MJF's entrance was awesome.
That was great. Oh yes, that was some fantastic trolling.
Jericho's match and you hear MJF music. Good job, man.
That was some fantastic trolling.
Awesome. That was a good moment.
Well, I think that I felt like that came from everybody was saying that at the first dance that they should play Cult of Personality and then have MJF come out, and there was no way they were going to ever do that. But this is a good example of doing that in a way that really caught everybody.
Well, let me ask you this, because this is a question that I've heard that I honestly don't really know a good answer to this. Do you think this feud did anything for MJF and for Jericho?
The end of it for MJF. Well, I mean, the feud needed to end in somewhere. You needed to have everybody happy. You needed like one good thing. Jericho had to win at the end of the feud. He had to.
Right.
So the feud itself is good for MJF because it creates the pinnacle. And it puts him, he's having a feud that he got the best of most of the time with the top guy. And it put him into major pay-per-view match. He had a major TV main event with War Games, and it put him into major pay-per-view matches on 2 different pay-per-views. So yeah, in that sense, I mean, MJF has already main evented a pay-per-view for the world title. I don't know how much he's generally considered the top heel in the company. I don't know how much high. The only reason he's not feuding for the world title right now is because the world title is held by a heel, so it would be silly. But I don't know. I mean, they're looking at him now.
Don Callis managing MJF would be hilarious. So yeah.
But it's like he is high enough up now that they are looking at him to give the rub to Brian Pillman. Like he is now somebody who is big enough in the company that he can give the rubs to other people.
Over now to put people over.
Yeah, well, not put people over, but give them the rub just by being in the ring with them. Like he makes Brian Pillman a bigger star by being in a match with him than he was before. So I don't know if there's any way to make that anything can make MJF higher within AEW than he already is, short of actually carrying the title.
And you see, they're actually going back to teasing the Wardlow MJF conflict now.
At some point, they've got to do. At some point,
I mean, they've kind of laid on it heavy the last 2 weeks, I think. So yeah.
They lay on it. Everybody keeps saying, "Oh, they're teasing it. They're teasing it again." Like they'll do it. They'll always tease stuff. I mean, they teased.
From the thing, man.
I mean, they teased people, especially when it comes to AEW. You just have to recognize what their penchant for long-term storytelling. They teased MJF and Jericho a year before they did.
Right. Remember when he hit the inner circle? That was basically a tease back then, right? So,
and that was literally a year before he actually joined the inner circle. I mean, that was like 10 months before Dinner Debonair, which was
amazing.
12 months ago. Yeah, Dinner Debonair. I think Dinner Debonair was like 12 months ago. I mean, when they talk about stuff being long-term, that's what long-term, that is 24 months is like how long stuff plays out in AEW. So you just got to be prepared for that stuff.
There are some good things that came from this seed, Of course, like Air is one of the most fantastic.
And now at some point, I know. And now at some point, so much stuff has happened, people may forget. Like I will hold that up as a forever monumental Dynamite moment. Like when you talk about the greatest moments on Dynamite, one of them always has to be Dinner Debonair.
Yeah, wrestling fans, we tend to have long memories and short memories when it's convenient to us. It's convenient to our current opinion.
I don't want to be like total anti-company stuff, but I do feel like one company has spent 20 years that doesn't remember anything and doesn't do anything long-term. Has spent 20 years, 25 years brainwashing wrestling fans to only think about stories in one way. It's like 2 years is like pretty average for a. I know. No, like 2 years is pretty average for New Japan. Like they book 2 years in advance, so you watch a lot of that. You're like, oh, this is normal, and you watch a lot of like American stuff, and you go like, and when AEW starts doing, you're like, you're still on this? Why hasn't this moved on? Why is this suddenly broken up?
So
we don't have to. I mean, they've been doing the Omega Page story is heading into year 3 now, and we're still working on it. But there's
no Dark Order in this pay-per-view.
No Dark Order in this pay-per-view. They're all over. That's all right, because they're all over Dark and Dynamite.
Get their shit together to be on a pay-per-view. So
Well, Anna Jay was in the pay-per-view, so there was one member. Anna Jay made her comeback to protect Tay Conti and was in the Battle Royal and had some good match. And they built up a feud between her and Bunny and Penelope, which is good. That should be good. Give something something to do. And that brings us up to the big main event, which Kenny Omega versus Christian, and there was probably no way they were going to be able to top the cage match. Kenny Omega is maybe the best big match wrestler in the world, but even he's going to have a hard time. And even with somebody as experienced as Christian, is going to have a really hard time topping that. But what they gave us was really good. I think maybe if there hadn't been a cage match and a CM Punk match, everyone would have said this was the best match by far and one of the best matches they saw, because their main event was really, really good. It just had the bad luck of being sandwiched between the cage match, the return to the ring of CM Punk, and all the after-match shenanigans, all of which people will remember from this, and they won't remember as much stuff. But I mean, you're talking about they had a really good 16-minute main event that started with a double foot stomp onto a table that Christian was laying under.
They brought up the table budget for this one.
They sure did. They had lots of flying dives, often under escapes from everything. Christian escaped from the One-Winged Angel multiple times. Both of them took each other's finishers. You had some Don Callis shenanigans. This is I think the only match that really had any sort of real outside interference and shenanigans, because of course it's Don Callis. You had Christian escaping from "You Can't Escape," which led to a chant of "He escaped, which is great. And then you teased a top rope kill switch into a top rope One-Winged Angel, which is crazy. That was an awesome.
That was
awesome
won the match, right? That was the final.
That was the final. That was the end.
That was And see, like a running theme, like I said with the show, except for maybe the Young Bucks Lucha Brothers match, I knew what the result was going to be, but they still put on a competitive match. I mean, that's what for a lot of these matches. Pretty much every match on the card that wasn't the women's battle royale or the Young Bucks Lucha Brothers. I was just like, I knew what was going to happen, but let's see if it's competitive, and it lived up to exactly that. It was competitive. Didn't think Christian was going to win, but it was a damn good match. They both brought it. They both did good moves against each other, and it was a competitive match. But of course, like you just mentioned, it was overshadowed by Kenny coming out after the match was won and doing this little promo talking about how no one alive or dead can beat him if you're retired, and the lights went out. And what to me was a huge surprise.
I think this was the biggest surprise to everyone because there've been a lot of rumors. There was a lot of rumors of Bryan Danielson. Everybody is waiting for this entire end of this pay-per-view to see if Bryan Danielson is going to come out or not. And instead, who should appear? They swerved your swerve and sent out Adam Cole back from the dead. Mr. Britt Baker. So it turned out that Panama Sunrise, the Pittsburgh Sunrise was not a tribute, but was in fact a foreshadowing for the end of this. Well, like he was up until 5 days ago, he was like, all right, I just finished my contract with WWE, and it was like Tuesday I can start negotiating, but nobody knows what he's going to do. And maybe he's like last Friday he was at, or I guess it goes a week ago Friday, he was at SmackDown having a one-on-one meeting with Vince McMahon, and they were pitching him ideas to get him onto the main roster. So there was nothing on the wind about this at all.
And that's the point I really want to make here is that a lot of the additions, if not literally all the additions before this pay-per-view that you saw from WWE were people that were basically let go by WWE and that for whatever terrible reason, not
or quit, let go or quit.
Or they quit or they went here. But with both Bryan Danielson and Adam Cole, they were literally like free agents that had their choice of where to go, and they both chose AEW.
And that WWE was actively trying to keep them.
They
were really
hard
to keep
them.
Them.
Offhand, they weren't like secondhand shit. No, WWE wanted those people too, and AEW got them. And that to me is what I hope is a tide-turning event in as far as how people view the two companies in relation to each other. Like I'm sorry, WWE, this is competition. I don't know what you're trying to do, but if they're taking your best stars when they have the option of going to you and they don't, that's competition to me.
Yeah. I mean, they're taking guys that WWE is getting rid of and presenting them in better ways than WWE ever did. I mean, they made stars out of Brody Lee, a star out of Miro that WWE could have for like 4 or 5 years, and they did like that. A star out of Malachi Black that WWE should have, and I don't know why, and they did it like that. And they have presented all of these guys. Ruby Soho, they presented her better in one night than she had been in like 5 years in WWE. And and to the point now where people who have a choice are going, I am actively choosing AEW because that's where I want to be. People who even really liked working at WWE and have family there. And
if you saw the post-match interviews with Adam Cole and Bryan Danielson, they both basically refused to shit on WWE. Yeah. They were both like, we have nothing bad to say about them. They made us famous. That's, like, what are we going to say? We just wanted to work here. That's it. Yeah, like, it wasn't like CM Punk hating them or basically any other promo where they talk about how shitty WWE is. They're like, nah, they were cool, but this is cooler.
Well, like the Adam Cole was a little different. Well, I guess we should say, like, obviously they swerved us. They sent Adam Cole out to had himself a great promo, got a great reaction. People were legitimately amazed and surprised. And then he immediately went heel and attacked Jungle Boy, who had come out to defend Christian. And it looked like we were going to end with the bad guys beating up the good guys and sending everyone away down, which if this was WWE, you would totally expect because you got to have that heat, pal. But instead, right before it looks like, don't forget sending people home happy. But right before it looked like that was going to happen, blue light comes down. Ride of the Valkyries starts to thunder through the entire arena, and Bryan Danielson comes out. Yeah. Well, apparently they tried really, really hard to get the final countdown, which was Bryan Danielson's Ring of Honor music.
Why is that hard to get when they?
Well, it's not that it was hard to get. It was basically Europe quoted a price so high that Tony Khan was like,
hey, have you seen it do anything in the last 30 years? We need this money.
Well, apparently, like way back when he was on the Indies and when Ring of Honor was finally starting pay-per-views, Ring of Honor tried to get it as his entrance music, and Europe quoted them $250,000 per pay-per-view to play it. And
so if it's on tour, this is how they get their money. They're like, fine, we'll just license out our song a bunch of times.
Again, a lot of people make money that way. So you know what, I can, and that was for Ring of Honor. And yeah, Tony Khan has a lot more money, so I can see them quoting him a much larger
you think
price.
You threw a lot more money than that at him, right?
Yeah, but
maybe they're just that protective of that song. They just
maybe
don't want to hear anybody else use it.
No, you got to save that one for all like the air shows. It's too much. It's too good. It's too good for a wrestling show. But yeah, but we got Flight of the Valkyries, which told everybody who's only ever known him from WWE exactly who was coming out, and it served exactly the right purpose.
Wait, real quick. So, actually, just to double back a little bit, this is something also that I heard that I thought was really awesome. So, you know how you mentioned that Europe said that they basically don't want their song to be used? The reason they charge that because they don't want to associate it with wrestling. I read an interview with Ruby Soho where the lead singer of Rancid actually suggested to her that they use her song. They use their song.
Well, that's where the name came from, because she was trying to figure out who her post WWE name was, and they had been friends for a while. So he was like, just call yourself Ruby Soho. Use my song. You can use it for free. So cool. You don't have to license it or anything. You can just use it for free. It's great.
Yeah. So see, then Brian Johnson didn't get that, I guess, luxury, and so he had to come out. So to me, he's fine. He went to fight the Valkyries. He didn't even do a promo or anything. He just came out and kicked a bunch of ass.
No, he did a promo after the show went off. So people who were in the building, he did do a promo for people who were in the building. But yeah, he just came in. They beat the crap out of the heels. He gave his running flying knee to Nick Jackson, who bounced. It looked like he bounced 4 times before he landed outside of the ring. He took a heck of a bump. Yeah, he did some. Yeah, it was like Rock taking a stunner level selling there before he came out of that ring. Yeah. I've never seen anybody sell a stunner by bouncing off their own head.
You know how you said that you never really watched CM Punk. I never really watched Adam Cole. But what I could tell from the first time, even when he did the promo, I was like, man, dude has a shitload of charisma. That's for sure. That
was why people were like, why isn't this guy on the main roster? What is wrong with Vince? I mean, he was on NXT for 4 years. They're like, can't you see that this guy has everything you need to be a main event star? Why isn't he on the main roster? And I mean, he basically, it was interesting in some of the post-show comments where he said, like, I knew in December that I was coming here as soon as my contract. He wasn't conflicted at all. It's like he loved working at WWE.
Right, he just extended it to work with Kyle O'Reilly because he wanted to put him over. Right, it's good wrestling. You would never see Hulk Hogan do shit like that. So yeah, that's what's really cool about him. I like that.
And like some of that you have to figure is that it's because Britt Baker's there, and it's a lot easier to want to be working there where Britt Baker is.
Which he brought in the promo against Tony on Dynamite.
Yes, he did. That was great. Nerd, get on my ring, nerd. But you also got to figure, like, somebody who's that good, who's in developmental for 4 years, and the main roster never showed any signs of ever bringing him up. Of course, he's going to come to AEW. What else?
But I mean, he was a king of NXT for a while, wasn't he?
But you can't stay there forever. I mean, you can't stay there.
Well, yeah, I mean, they're even changing the whole philosophy of NXT. So yeah, it's not the same company he joined, right? So yeah,
right, exactly. Yeah, they may not have wanted, but apparently, from all the news going around, what they pitched to him was to not be a wrestler on the main roster, but to be a manager. They were going to team him up with Keith Lee. They were going to turn Keith Lee heel and have him be Keith Lee's manager.
2 mistakes.
2 giant mistakes. I'm like, do you guys know anything? What are you doing?
Is there a third stupid thing they said? I mean,
It's like, are you trying to drive him away?
I mean, don't be wrong. Adam Cole seems like he's a good talker to be a manager, but I mean, I've never seen him wrestle, but I'm assuming he's a good wrestler.
He's a very good wrestler.
He's very Shawn Michaels-ish, but yeah.
Yeah, he's very Shawn Michaels. Well, he's set out right out. Shawn Michaels is his guy in wrestling. That was what he wanted to be.
Kind of have to look to Shawn to be the kind of the standard,
Yeah, and that was like why he went to. That's why he went to WWE and why he wanted to work in NXT, because it meant he was going to get to work with Shawn Michaels. And a lot of people thought that was like a good reason why he would have probably stayed, and it probably would have been. But there were lots of other reasons for him to come back. It did mean they had to commit a very long section of being the elite to raising him from the dead.
Oh,
which they did. Yes, they murdered him when he signed his WWE contract 4 years ago. They poisoned him with a poison monster energy drink.
Okay, got it.
And so he's been dead. And every so often they will mention having a dead friend and
Take him out to the
occasionally
Hardy
stuff.
Take him out to the
So,
lake and then back.
No, the elite committed to a seance to bring him back, and he reappeared and is like, "This isn't Reseda. Where am I? What year is it? 4 years. Where have I been?" It was great.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of what you have to gag, but yeah,
It writes
yes,
itself.
and I guess they're going right into this thing where it's with the elite versus like Jurassic Express and Christian and Bryan Danielson against them, which is gonna I guess set up a 5-on-5 thing or
well, see, like it gives you a bunch of small, because obviously what they're setting up, and we might as well dive right into Dynamite because this was a big part. There were lots of lots of really good things in Dynamite. The second most watched Dynamite ever. It's the Dynamite coming after their most watched pay-per-view of all time. And first, a Dynamite that beat Raw in 18-49 in the key demo.
And it was not
head-to-head.
Beat Raw, #1 cable show on Wednesday.
This is what, like their third week in a row being the #1 cable show. They've been the #1 cable show on Wednesday a lot since they came back.
Yeah.
Rampage has been #1 on Friday once, but they beat Raw head-to-head in the same week with no NFL, no nothing else. And they beat Raw. They're not going to beat SmackDown because it's on network, but they beat Raw. And that ain't nothing. And the SmackDown had still on cable. They beat both.
Better book show than Raw anyway. So
it has been, yeah, and is in Madison Square Garden. Well, it's got Brock Lesnar and John Cena and Becky Lynch on it this week, and that's hard to
they're big returns, which I was like, okay. I mean, I see a lot of problems with how they did those returns. First of all, but yeah, that's another show that we're not.
Well, they're saying they don't. Yeah, they're saying they don't see AEW as competition. But oh, by the way, Brock Lesnar and Becky Lynch are all going.
How can you say it's not competition? People who actively wanted said no and went to another company. That's competition. Because
they're either lying to us or they're lying to themselves, but they're lying to somebody
or everybody. They're just lying. That's it.
But they had a couple. You didn't get to see two. Well, you did. There was although we're skipping to it, but it was the most watched segment on Dynamite. We had the face-to-face meeting of we might as well call it the Danielson coalition against the elite, where Adam Cole came out. Stable? Yeah, I don't know. I don't think it's a stable. I think it's I don't think it's a stable. I think it's an alliance of convenience for this storyline.
Where Christian, Jurassic Express, I'm not counting Marco Start, Kaz, Christian, and then Bryan Danielson. Mm-hmm. So is that 5?
Yeah. Well, it was Jurassic Express.
And, I guess they got Brandon Cutler. That
took up big for and Kazarian. I don't think Kazarian will be a big part of it. It's basically everybody who has a problem with the elite right now. Right. And the elite. And Adam Cole came out, chased poor Tony Schiavone from the ring to make sure everybody booed him heartily. Yeah. And then Danielson came out, and what they basically said is, all right, is Danielson versus Kenny Omega, a match that lots of people would have wanted. That's like Superman versus Thor or something. It's like, a cross-promotional match people have been wanting to see forever. And never thought it would happen because the two promotions never worked for each other. And of course, no one would ever leave WWE. And yet here we are. Bryan Danielson is in AEW, so you can get a dream match that people would have never expected that they would be able to get. And that's obviously where you're going to jump right. Do what?
How are they going to work around the rankings thing with this?
We'll find out. I'm sure they have an idea of how they're going to do that.
I was it seemed like Cole and Danielson were kind of facing off a little bit against each other. And I was kind of thinking that they would start up with that before they get to Danielson.
Well, what I think they're going to do, and I think this is why they've set it up as these two factions instead of one-on-one, is so that you have, because they're probably, my feeling is they would probably put it off until pay-per-view, which is Full Gear in November. And which means you need to have a lot of other stuff and spinning plates around this in the meantime. So by having Jurassic Express there and having Christian there, you can have 5-man tags. I would not be at all surprised to see the main event at Arthur Ashe being a 5-man tag between the elite and the anti-elite, right?
Yeah. Almost like
that's a big thing.
Type of things that
and that you can have a lot of these tag matches and or matches, but between the other participants. Like next week, we're going to have Kazarian versus Adam Cole. Things like that. So you have a lot of those versions of that you can have, keeping the feud going until Danielson and Omega actually get in the ring against each other.
Right. One thing I also did like about the show is because we're talking about all these additions, but AEW still is making the time to feature their homegrown talent because there was a good match between Dante Martin and Will Hobbs on this.
That was a great match, even though Will Hobbs got like knocked out
like
halfway through, but it's still great.
Completely opposite styles, and I love seeing those type of matches when they're good people like doing them. So
and it worked really well, especially for two young guys who are on the way up. Neither of whom got hurt. Both of whom got really helped by being in the ring. Each other reminded everyone our homegrown. Yeah, okay, we brought in Bryan Danielson and CM Punk, who came out and gave a great promo and jumped right into a program with Ricky Starks, which is good because that's a great guy for him to be in a program with. And they can have I'm sure, a great match.
So what is going on with Brian Cage? Because there's some shit going on, right? His wife is complaining about him not being used. This feud is stalling the hell out right now. And
I think
passing it to go to CM Punk.
They are. Well, I mean, it was supposed to happen at the pay-per-view. Apparently, Starks is still not medically cleared, so they just have not been able to have the blow off. I assume that he is looking at the fact that he's been in this feud for a long time. He's not moving into a main event spot. He hasn't been in a main event spot since last year. It's all been this interpromotional stuff. He's been on pay-per-views, but he hasn't been in a main event slot. Maybe he thought he should have been and isn't. And other people are, they've been pushing Darby Allin and whatnot. So he's been grousing, and maybe he'll jump to WWE where he thinks he'll get pushed into a main event slot.
Cage?
Maybe he will. Cage. Maybe he will. Maybe he won't. You've got a giant roster like this. There's not a main event spot for everybody. And
I know.
Especially when you've got, when you've just brought in a bunch of superstars, there's definitely not a main event spot for everybody. And I'm sure there will be something for him. I mean, they've given him big stuff, but a lot, they had all the Darby Allin stuff. They had all the stuff with Sting. They had all the Darby Allin stuff. I think that the Team Taz blow up was, they had all the stuff with Hangman. I think they thought the team, but he hasn't been able to win any of the big matches. He's supposed to be moving babyface to start having big matches, but it hasn't happened because he's been stuck in the stuff with Starks, who's been hurt, and so he can't have the blow off, and they don't want to move him into anything else, so they have the blow off. So, maybe
is
maybe
it
they
basically
do.
unfortunate circumstance for Brian Cage right now?
I think so. It could also be that the timing has passed him by. That the time for him to really get over came and went, and it hasn't happened, and so now he's not going to get that chance. And that's going to happen to a lot of people. That's kind of happened with Scorpio Sky. He's being patient, and they're I mean, I got a feeling they're going to come back around to him. If he sits there and is patient, he'll have his chance to try to get over, but he's going to have to get himself over. Some people want to wait, and some people don't. I don't know, but definitely they are going to go. I'd be willing to bet they have something for Brian Cage to do when he's done with Ricky Starks. He may not like it, but I'm sure they have something.
They need to have that match.
They're going to. I think it just keeps getting put off for medical reasons that they have no control over. It's like whatever it was that happened to. Yeah, it's like the stuff that happened to his neck in that Adam Page match is still not cleared. And I think they thought it was, and then it wasn't.
Yeah, okay. Because I'm about to say, because when they set up that match in Houston, I'm assuming they thought it was, and he must have just right before. Maybe he saw our wonderful doctors. It's like, maybe I'm not so healthy. So yeah.
That seems to be what it was.
Like watching Brian Cage wrestle, and even this little Wolverine fanboyism that he does.
His match with Hobbs was great. I loved it. Do more stuff like that.
In the past, like they should, when the whole breakup started, instead of stalling with this whole storyline with Ricky, have him wrestle Hobbs.
Yeah. So I don't know. But the other thing he could see like Hobbs having this great match with Dante Martin and going, oh, Hobbs is getting the spot I should have had. And Hobbs is. And Hobbs is getting the push. And that's.
I also really like Will Hobbs. I think
he's great. He's going to be. I'm going to say because I don't, unlike some of the other promotions, I don't think that many people will ever hold the AEW World Title. It's going to be something that not many people ever get. But I think at some point in the future, Will Hobbs will get the AEW World
You think he should be in the conversation at some point?
At some point, as he gets more experience. I think so.
I'm a big fan. When he first started, I guess I see the potential in him. Remember when he lost every match on Dark, basically? And I was he's way too big and good to be losing 10 matches in a row, man. And
but you know what? A lot of guys lose like 25 matches on Dark. He lost like 10. And then it was like, now you're going to start winning. And you're going to beat everybody all the time because we're going to bring and now you're on Dynamite after 10 matches.
Up there, I remember it. So and that really started where people had a lot of faith in him in the ring, basically.
Yeah.
So.
And he's good. And this was a great, even though he got his bell rung in it, this was a really good match. Better than the Dustin Rhodes Malachi Black match, which started it off, which I liked, but
and I'm fine with the story. People expected matches out of this stuff. I'm like, although it was a little bit more competitive than I thought it was going to be.
No, I expected it to be very competitive because each one needs to get more and more competitive. At some point, you need to get an idea that he can be beaten. He can't be Goldberg. He can't be squashing everybody all the time. Stuff as you go higher up the card, it has to start getting harder and harder. And Dustin's quite a bit higher up the card than the guys he's been wrestling.
And it was a longer match. It was a little bit more, but you knew it was going to happen at the end.
Yeah, it just had a few bips and bops, especially when he did the black mask to his shoulder, and I'm like, that's no good. That's no good.
From the mouth, and I was like, that
doesn't make sense. Yeah, he got him in the shoulder. That didn't work out.
Yeah,
can't always be perfect every time, but that was not so good, especially for the starting match.
Yeah, but from funny to me, it's like, wow, like that's a hell of a body reaction to getting hit in the shoulder.
No, maybe his lungs are in his shoulder. I don't know. Hey, he hits really hard. He's like channeling his cheese.
All done to set up Cody versus Malachi.
Of course, that's what it's all been.
Be an actual competitive match. So
I would hope so. I would assume so. They've lined it up a lot like the Brody Lee thing when he came back and they had the dog collar match. And I don't know if maybe they'll put a big stipulation. It'll be a big gimmick match. I would go either way.
Match in a while. No, he beat a Go-Go for some reason.
He beat a Go-Go for some reason.
Yeah. So it's not like he hasn't won a big pay-per-view match in a while.
I'm trying to remember. And he beat QT Marshall at the Road Rager.
Oh God.
and then he also lost a tag match that due to a Go-Go and then a Go-Go had to go to England for surgery, and nobody knows if he's going to be able to come back and wrestle. Well, he's still recuperating. He's still not medically cleared. Nobody knows if he'll be. They should have him come back and at least talk if they think he's going to wrestle again. But it's tough right now.
That's fine.
He is apparently really, really, really popular in England. If they ever do an England tour, they need to have him on.
Not that many now that Kip Sabian's gone, right? Who's their hero?
Well, Kip Sabian's back. He's just not wrestling. I don't think he's medically cleared either. Really, he's been like going behind the scenes with like a box on his head doing signings for like people. But I know Penelope's the one. First, Penelope was like a valet for Joey Janela, and then she was a valet for Kip Sabian, and now she's the one who gets all the ring time and all the great matches, and they are just kind of like left in the dust.
She's been getting a lot more. She's a lot more submissions in her matches and stuff. Like I think
she's been doing a lot. She's been working really hard on her ring work. Yeah, she does that Muda lock really well. There's a lot of extra bits and pieces to it now. So but then we followed up the Malachi. The Malachi Black match wasn't what I think we'd want it to be because we want it to be this amazing thing, but it helps that they follow it right up with CM Punk coming out to really sell everyone on the whole card and to put over Cincinnati and Aunt Linda, who, if anybody knows who that is, if you haven't been watching Dark Side of the Ring, that is Brian Pillman's sister, who is there with the entire Pillman clan, because we're going to make a star out of Brian Pillman Jr. or die trying, which they totally 100% should do.
As long as you don't do Griff and you do Brian. What's the thing? Brian does have potential. He's a lot of fire to speak.
Bring Griff along for the ride.
Yeah, that's what he's doing now. So
hey, Griff was out there. Griff was out there.
Like, the injured list from carrying Griff so much.
Oh, my back hurts so much from carrying you on it. Well, until we have the inevitable Hollywood Blondes breakup part 2, is that what you're saying?
I mean, it's more of a breakup. It's going to be like Miro and Kip. It's just where Griff just goes away and Brian just does stuff. I think that's what's going to happen.
Maybe. I don't know. I really like the Varsity Blondes act with the 3 of them. If it was just the 2 of them, it'd be kind of.
I like it when they claim makes fun of them. Which happened on Rampage and Max Caster.
Well, we had been here too, because we had right after CM Punk got into a beef with Team Taz and used Taz's own line against him, which Taz did not like. I bet you in real life Taz did not like
Taz's whole reason for the feud was so weak, and I even feel like the announcers were kind of like, he didn't say anything about you. He's like, yeah, but he's been doing interviews and saying our names, and please just stop saying our names. Except you didn't say it this time, but just another time, stop saying our names. Like, okay, so
but you know what? Punk sold it with like his bemused kind of. I didn't say anything, but if you want a problem, I'll give you a problem. Yeah, it worked. It worked.
Like what match lighting?
It amazes. You know what really it is. It just I know I texted you during the show. It amazes me how different Dynamite is from just a year ago. Like now, like Dynamite a year ago was fine. I really liked it. They were doing good stuff. I haven't ever really been like down on Dynamite since it started. But like a year ago, it was all the guys who originally signed on, a handful of people that they had just then brought over. I think They still had Brody Lee was still was building up the Dark Order. Brian Cage, Team Taz was really just starting to get together for the first time. Ricky Starks and Kingston were brand new. They were like brand new pieces, and then you had like all the guys they were trying to make stars out of. And now you look a year later, Malachi Black is their leadoff match, followed by a speaking segment from CM Punk. And a couple segments later, Bryan Danielson is going to come out and speak. It is so different. It's so different. It's such a different show. It's the same show and simultaneously a different show.
But there's a common theme, which a lot of people would call just kissing ass or maybe just being political or something. But another thing in the post-match interviews that I saw is that a lot of people, they credited Tony for the reason this all happens. And I believe that too. I think that's really because Tony he was a big fan when he was a kid. He saw what worked and what doesn't, and decided to basically put his money where his ideas were, and wasn't worried about like trying to beat anybody in ratings or anything, even though he loves doing that stuff. It seems like he just really wanted to put out a product that he wanted to enjoy, like that he would enjoy watching. And so
he's looked at what hasn't worked, and he's like, all right, that didn't work, so let's do it this way. So like the thing you notice this time, it's like, yes, Bryan Danielson versus Kenny Omega, although Kenny Omega from like a US viewer's viewpoint is going to be very much an AEW guy. Most people who are watching him on television here probably didn't really watch him much in Japan. I mean, there's definitely a subset that did, but there's more people will know him from AEW than are going to know him from his Japan stuff. So it's like, so, everything they were doing, even with all this stuff, it's with AEW guys. Like CM Punk's like, all right, give me Ricky Starks, AEW guy. And then we're going to follow that. And then MJF, AEW guy. I'm going to come out here and I'm going to be a complete dick so that Brian Pillman Jr., another, as far as anyone's concerned, another AEW guy, because this is definitely the biggest audience for wrestling he's ever had in his life.
Easy to make fun of. It's like not Detroit, but it's it's right up of it.
I'm amazed nobody made the only good thing you can say about Cincinnati is that it's not Cleveland joke, because that's such an easy joke to make.
And he's worse than Cleveland. That's why no one makes that joke, man.
Oh, that's not how I hear it.
That Cleveland's great either. I lived in Ohio, but it's called the Nasty Natty for a reason, man. And even Mox called it the Nasty Natty.
That's true.
Which we actually even skipped over that because during the pay-per-view, Minoru Suzuki came out.
That's right. We totally didn't talk about this. We talked about, Moxley got in his big match with Satoshi Kojima. That everyone was like, oh, it's just Kojima. Yeah. It was nice. It was fun. But everyone was like, oh, it's just Kojima. And then after he beats Kojima, Minoru Suzuki's music starts coming.
I know who that guy is, because I've always seen that guy just being like an insane badass. And
he's an insane. And everybody lost their damn minds that Minoru Suzuki came over from New Japan face to face. Gave him the sleeper hold, the Gotch pile driver, and
for a guy age, man. Also,
he's quick. He used to be a legitimate MMA fighter. I mean, he's done both. Yeah, King of Pancrase. I mean, Minoru Suzuki is no joke, and even at like 53, he is no joke. And you had this building full of 10,000 people in the heartland in America singing the lyrics to his Japanese theme song. So there were some people were like excited for that. Exactly. And that's a big part of his entrance. I mean, his entrance is long, but everybody is into it. And obviously the people who are going to go live to All Out are going to be people who are watching a lot of these guys when they were in Japan as well, and been those kinds of elite fans.
It almost feels like that would have been a better pay-per-view. Because what we saw from the Dynamite match, it wasn't terribly long.
Well, it seems like there's going to be some more. Well, he had a great match. He had a great series of matches with Suzuki in Japan right before the pandemic, and they did like 25-minute matches, so they can do them.
Recent history with that.
They've had very recent history, so they can definitely do them. It just didn't happen here, but we'll get to that in a second, because I did want to talk about, like, I really am a fan of the MJF Brian Pillman angle. I think it's good that people who have been made big in AEW are now going to try to make the next guy, AEW guy, big. Is something they need to be doing. It is smart, and they're doing it a smart way. They set up a big match for Pillman against MJF at Arthur Ashe Stadium, which it'll be the biggest spotlight Pillman has had, including even against his match with Miro. So it shows they're going to work really hard to actually push him, and that they're like, all right, once we decide to push somebody, it's not going to be like 3 weeks and we forget and go back to our old standbys. We're going to try really hard. Maybe he'll get over, maybe he won't, but we're going to try really, really hard. And MJF was laying out some really really awful stuff. He was working really hard to get booed, and he succeeded.
Yeah. Again, easy target with Cincinnati. I mean, skyline chili is literally chili that's mixed with chocolate put on spaghetti. What the fuck is that?
Apparently, it's a tradition in Cincinnati.
I mean, just things are tradition.
But then he was getting
the fryer. So yeah.
But then he was getting like directly into the Pillman family's faces, and he was saying some Pillman family stuff that one, you know, if you were not MJF, if you were like, say, Max Caster, the Acclaimed, that stuff might have gotten you kicked off TV for 3 or 4 weeks. But
yeah, I mean,
you got away with it.
I mean, I talked about Skyline Chili. The only thing Max could say before he got cut up was about how the chili looked like shit. Which remember, Bones was like, "Hey, yeah." So the MJF, I mean, like you mentioned earlier, I guess it's good for Brian Pillman to get him more publicity. He's going to be in the ring. I hope he doesn't win the feud because I'm a huge MJF.
There is no way that's going to happen in New York. There's no way MJF is getting beaten in New York. He's a Long Island guy. Something else AEW does that nobody else does is that they do not beat people in their hometown. As we found out this week, where although he did get beaten up a little bit by MJF, he's set up for his revenge. And then he and Griff both got beaten up. And in the locker room later, as they're nursing their wounds, Max Caster, who I think is speaking non-rap for the first time ever on national television, came in with Anthony Bowens to rub salt in him. Because something we didn't mention, I think we should. We'll take 5 seconds to talk about Dark and Dark Elevation this week. Sure. Is that on Elevation, where Anthony Bowens was having a losing singles match, Max Caster returned from purgatory to punch Bowens' opponent, who I can't even remember who it was now, in the face with the chain. Oh, that's right. It was Griff. He punched Griff. That's right. He punched Griff and with the chain, and Griff was winning, and he punched Griff with the chain, knocked him out, and gave Bowens the win, which was then followed up on Dark on Tuesday, where the Acclaimed were reunited and came back, and they won the squashiest tag squash match I've seen. If it went a minute, I would be amazed. They gave a great bit where Max comes down, reads an approved rap, and throws it away. Bowens talked for an extended period of time, which was also really good. And then they threw it away, and Max started giving his own rap again until it was Sean Dean, who they were accusing of having a small peen.
Yeah.
that one was a bit of a stretch. That rhyme was a bit of a stretch. It was Sean Dean and it was the guy who dresses like a Roman dude. Who's
D3K or whatever?
D3K, yeah, DK3 or whatever, D3K or something like that. And that went about a minute. Poor Sean Dean, he still can't catch a break. Got signed, and he's still losing all the time on Dark. But that's okay.
Max Caster didn't come on TV to get completely buried, or didn't come back to get completely buried for his mistakes or something like that. So
no, they just kept him off for a little while so people could forget about it, and now they've moved on. And then he came back to throw roses in Brian Pillman's face and be a dick and sign a match for Rampage.
There was no Julia Hart.
No Julia Hart. She was a bunch. She was on Dark a bunch. But wasn't on Dynamite. Well, she did come out. Didn't she come out on Rampage? Because I believe like the entire faction came out on Rampage.
Yeah. But
so she was obviously
they had her.
They were in the locker room. Julia can't be in the guys' locker room. They were in the locker. They were in the locker room. Come on, let's have a little bit of logic about this stuff. And spoiler. And so because they taped Rampage, Brian Pillman was going to face Max Caster 1-on-1 in his hometown of Cincinnati. Spoiler alert, Brian Pillman does not lose in his hometown.
Right. I mean, he dressed like a goddamn and that was another thing when Max Caster was running down the Cincinnati sports teams. You talk about the Reds and like the Bengals are right there. You're not going to talk about they've been forever. Like what the fuck?
Because the Reds are really close to playoff contention, and they're probably going to blow it.
I guess. Like Bengals, that isn't like news to like Cincinnati. They're like, yeah, whatever.
And it's just the Reds are probably going to blow it, and especially people who from Cincinnati. It's probably going to hurt them real bad. That will make them more frustrated right now.
Okay, all right,
like saying the Bengals suck is like saying the sky is blue. Who's going? People in Cincinnati will agree with you.
Yeah, you're right. They're kind of running like a shit. I don't like football because of that.
Everybody in Cincinnati, you say that, and everybody in Cincinnati will just shrug and go, "Yeah, you're probably right."
There's a collective shrug. It's like, yeah, what do you want?
Even Brian Bosworth can't be bothered to go watch an AEW show in Cincinnati. He's going to come to Houston to see it instead. He's like, I ain't going to watch. I ain't. You're like, I'm not happy about any of the time I spent in Cleveland or in Cincinnati.
So more than we did.
That's true. But yeah, and they set that up for a great match. We had the continuation of the excellent continuation of the growing Ruby Britt Baker match with the three-way between Britt Baker and it wasn't three. It was the setup for the three-way. It was Jamie Hayter versus Ruby Soho, and a nice little warm-up match, which of course was then followed by which Ruby won, but it was sloppy. There was some mess. There was some mess. I won't blame it on either of them because they're actually both.
Ruby game match.
Ruby won the match. The match, but like it broke down in a couple of different places. Like there were two or three different times where it seemed like they were each trying to do different moves and weren't sure what the other person was doing. And
they got flashback to Charlotte Nia.
It is not. No, it was not Charlotte Nia. There was nothing in it remotely like that. But it wasn't. It was. Well, you really wanted a strong showcase for Ruby in her first singles match, and it wasn't quite that. But it was fine, and but it had that nice little angle at the end where Riho, who I think this is the first time she's back on national television in a year plus, ran out to make the save, got beaten up as well because she's teeny tiny. And so Chris Statlander, who still got a beef with the good doctor, ran out to help make the save and set up a 6-man tag for Rampage of Britt Baker, Rebel, and Jamie Hayter against. This is like the random team generator. You're talking about Rio, Chris Statlander, and Ruby Soho.
Top bases and top heels. I guess Red Velvet was busy, so
I guess so. I mean. The Statlander stuff makes sense. I'm glad to see Riho back on television, but and they had a very good
Rio was a random one in there, honestly. It was just Rio. But I mean, I like Rio. She was the first champion. It's nice to see her.
It gives her something to do. Like when she was the champion, all she had to be was the champion. But now she had like no connection.
You don't see it all anymore. So
she was in the Battle Royal, and she goes and gives people time on Dark. But there's nothing for her to do right now. They need something for her to do, and
for a while.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. They need to have storylines for Dark and Elevation instead of just making them squash matches for tune-ups for the actual shows.
Well, they do.
Give these people to do.
They do, but they don't have enough. Well, that's something we need to mention. They have some continuation ones. So that's something that so I guess 3 things we should mention going back to that is a lot of the Bunny and Penelope Ford against Tay Conti has been happening on Dark. And that is now spilling over into some extended matches, because one thing we saw on Dark, we saw Anna Jay come out to help Tay Conti, and that is going to turn into a match on Dynamite that they've already announced for next week.
Oh yeah, so what is the Dark Order split right now?
So the Dark Order, so that's something else we should mention, because this has been happening all on the other big storyline on Dark is that when Hangman Page said he needed to be some time by himself and he didn't want Dark Order helping him, and then he went out and faced Kenny Omega alone, and the Elite started beating him down. The Dark Order ran out to save him, but Evil Uno and Stu Grayson stopped the rest of the Dark Order from making the save. They said, we need to respect Hangman's wishes. So that began a slow split between Dark Order, where you have Stu Grayson and Evil Uno on one side saying, we got to respect what Hangman wants. And on the other side, you had Alex Reynolds, John Silver, 5 and 10 saying, no, that we should have gone and saved him. What are you guys doing? And so slowly and Colt Cabana has been kind of caught in the middle as a negotiator.
But I thought Silver talked to Uno this week.
No. So you have had, and Reynolds has been out, I think, for like family stuff. So he hasn't even been around. He's been in and out for like a bunch of.
He's gonna be a dad, right?
He's gonna be a dad.
Yeah.
So, well, you know what? 2.0 is a dad. He only missed 1 show. So, be a professional. I'm kidding. No, Reynolds is off going to be a dad. He deserves the time off. So that's the split. And they have been, and Colt Cabana has been in the middle and has been slowly trying to get them back together. And and they've tried. And so they've had some Dark matches where, like, Five was willing to give them the benefit of the doubt and came in and did a tag match with Uno and Grayson against Uno and Cabana against Death Triangle, and they lost partly because you had some collision between Uno and Five, and both sides blaming the other. And so you've had the beginning of increased tension, particularly between Uno and Five, where but really against like the help Hangman, leave Hangman B sides, and they've been yelling at each other. And Uno's been getting frustrated, been trying to claim leadership. They have been saying, no, if you were a leader, you would have helped Hangman. And it led to a singles match between on Dark last week between Five and Uno that Uno won with a little bit of cheating, and it left people feeling even more sore. So that led to and Uno has been yelling at Silver and yelling at Reynolds. He basically said, like, Silver or Reynolds, you need to stop, wasting your time with this and focus on your own career so you can get out of Silver's shadow. He's been saying mean things and then taking it back and saying, I don't really mean Silver that. Shadow, and
that was like the
yeah. So this past week on Dark, they were fighting, and then on Dynamite they were fighting with each other, and returning Anna Jay came back to say, you guys need to stop with the arguing. You've got to be a team. So you have Uno and Cabana and Stu on one side and the rest of Dark Order on the other side. So they had a mixed tag. They had a tag match this week, and but it was against the Pinnacle, Sean Spears and FTR. People say FTR never wrestles on TV. They wrestle all the time. It's a lot of times it's a trios match.
Powerful.
It's a really good trios match, and they had a great match with Proud and Powerful a week ago. So they're on TV 2 weeks in a row. But that was going to be a really, really, really tough team to beat as it is, and Dark Order is like fighting with themselves this whole time, not paying attention to who has the tags, not getting self-absorbed, and So then the question is, are they going to break apart? Is a new leader going to come in?
What do you think?
Or are they going to be fighting with each other and actually break apart and continue fighting with each other until Hangman comes back? And not for nothing, Hangman is heavily advertised for a show in Charlottesville, West Virginia, which is his hometown. Charlottesville, Virginia, which is his hometown, and it will be the Fallout show for Full Gear. It will be the show after Full Gear.
Okay, so it's basically
that feels like a destination we are heading towards.
Yeah, that Adam's going to come back, and either things are going to break up, or either he's going to be the catalyst for whatever change happens at Dark Order.
That's what it feels like.
Yeah,
there are still all of these rumors flying around out there that Bray Wyatt may or may not be coming to AEW. I don't think he is, but
yeah. You mentioned Impact the other day that you thought
there have been rumors floating around. He's talking with Impact, but he and Braun Strowman are both negotiating with Impact. Don't know. I can see that happening. I would be surprised if either of them show up in AEW, but
it kind of reminds you like the original Dark Order storyline where it was like, oh, who's going to be the exalted one? We thought Matt Hardy, there was Brody Lee, that type of thing. So maybe one of those things where it's like you think it's Bray Wyatt, but actually someone else that makes a lot of sense. You don't know. So
I think the breakup is a good way to keep that Hangman piece of the story spinning until he actually comes back, and then they can
it's a way to keep him in the storyline without actually being in the storyline.
Especially if the Danielson Omega match is tied up at Full Gear, and then it ends, and you can jump right back into and here's Hangman Page, and then there's lots of other stuff to do. Like the thing I'm most looking forward to that Punk has mentioned is that one of his dream matches is a tag match, CM Punk and Danielson against the Young Bucks. And
I
would love to see that
right off the bat. Yeah, of course, no.
I would love. That's a big reason
that I remember. So
they have barely been in the same promotion at the same time.
In Ring of Honor, they probably have, but it's not in WWE.
They were barely in WWE at the same time,
right?
And they were at different levels, and they were barely in Ring of Honor at the same time. So they were always like ships passing in the night, that sort of thing,
right?
So
I mean, that's the other thing, like all the fantasy booking that we can all do now. It's like, oh, like these guys and these guys, because you just have so many hot variables now.
Yep. And the other big thing from Dark, we had a lot to catch up on, is they finally paid. I mean, we were talking about storylines on Dark and Dark Elevation, which they do. They finally paid off the Big Swole Diamante feud, where they had a 3 strikes match in Chicago last week that played out this week, which the 3 strikes match was going to be 3 falls. The winner will be best of 3 falls. First fall, you can only win by pinning. Second fall, you can only win by submission. and third fall you can only win by knockout. And
this is a good simulation. I like
it
that.
is. I like that. Yeah. And it was a really good series. I mean, it was a full main event. They went probably a good 15, 16 minutes, and really, really good submission stuff. Swole's gotten a lot better. This is not as good as the tag match with Julia Hart and against Nyla Rose and Diamante, but it was good. And it shows that, if she can keep doing stuff like this, they should put her back on TV and look at pushing her.
I really like that simulation. I hope they bring it back for other matches.
I think they were testing it. I also think they were kind of testing it to see if it worked as a match. I think it does. I think you could make a really good TV match, TV main event out of that.
I mean, it's like everybody who likes every type of style. I mean, I'm the type of guy that likes submission stuff, so you get to see that. And maybe people like strikers, and then you get to maybe the knockout portion for that, So I think it's a really. I mean, of course, you have to have two people that can pull it off, of course, right? But if you do, I think that I love that simulation. I've never heard that before at all, but I'm in love with it immediately.
I think they just invented. I think it's kind of like the Casino Battle Royal, where they want to do a 2 or 3 falls. They just wanted to come up with a new version of that, and this was it, which is fine. It worked. I thought it worked really well.
Yeah, I mean, it's such a better way to do 2 out of 3 falls. I like that a lot.
Yeah. I'm trying to remember what the rest of Dynamite. The Dynamite was actually really good, but it was really good, but it was kind of bounced. Oh well, I guess we've covered everything except for. The unfortunate main event, which seemed to be a casualty of things running long. So the main event was going to be this passion project for Jon Moxley. Jon Moxley refacing Minoru Suzuki in his hometown in Cincinnati, and I watch on AEW Plus, so I get to see the picture-in-picture stuff as part of the match. So I don't notice the commercial breaks as much as other people do. But it was short. So you had basically like 3 minutes for entrances, which still went fast enough that they had to cut Suzuki's in half. So everybody who was looking forward to singing along with it didn't get to. So the crowd was already disgruntled. And then they jump right into it. And you figure that this is the main event, that this is going to be like 15 minutes, somewhere 12 to 15 minutes. And it went like half that time. It went about 8. Somewhere in the middle there, Suzuki got busted.
Suzuki got bloody shit.
I was wondering if they just, as soon as his eye got busted open, they decided to go home, and that was it. What do you think?
And it definitely wasn't blading, because it wasn't like a blade spot. No. It was like, why would you blade from an elbow? It seemed like an actual legit.
No, I think that was a legit like hard way.
But it also adds to like the whole Suzuki mystique and everything, right?
Yeah.
I think I also like about Suzuki is the way he sells moves is really interesting. Like, especially the when you get him with the forearms, and it's like he's gonna fall down.
He's like, I'm not gonna fall down. You can't make me fall down, no matter what. That was
love that. That's awesome. Very clever spot. So yeah, I think it's one of those things where they saw him get busted open. They're like, well, shit, let's wrap this up, fellas. But
then they had like 3 minutes of nothing to do, and Moxley's running around and celebrating in his hometown, which is fine, but it went on for a long time.
It ended with him in the stands and the crowds. A lot of people are like, oh, that's not really like you think like he'd be talking to end the show or something, but like, but I think there's some things that weren't planned that just kind of happened.
Well, it looks like they're going to.
It sold out. I mean, everybody knew Suzuki was a badass. It came in and they put on a very physical match. So
it looks like they're going to run it back at Arthur Ashe. Kingston was out calling for a tag match, so now it looks like they're talking about Suzuki and Archer versus Moxley and Kingston in a tag match for
because Archer's going to do that first.
Well, Archer was part of Suzuki's. He hasn't been on TV in a while, and Archer was part of Suzuki's stable in New Japan, so it makes sense.
Oh, yeah.
They had a history. Suzuki Goon.
Yeah, Suzuki Goon.
Right. So it makes sense. It makes a lot of sense, and see, everybody's gonna. So people will get their match after all. It was a little bit goofy, but they just ran out of time.
Right.
Which is why it's when you have a really big match, if you can do it the Rampage way, you put your big match that leads a lot of time up front, like they did with Andrade versus Pac, which we finally got.
Well, so I heard a lot of criticism about this match. I didn't get a lot of the criticism.
I heard just people saying it was great. And I watched and I was like, this is fucking great.
I thought the finish, it wasn't a clean pin, but it set up a lot of things. It first of all, it protected characters, and that's what you want.
They protected Pac, which you want to do.
You can't bury Pac. You have to have him. And Friday's just starting, right? And all the spots and everything. But the best thing, I think, so of course at the end of the match, Chavo comes out while Pac has Andrade pinned. Chavo comes out with his
he has him in the brutalizer. He has him trapped in the brutalizer.
Yeah, and he comes out with his iPad to death, hits him, and then that's how Andrade gets a pin.
You notice how every inanimate object in wrestling weighs as much as an anvil? Like if I hit you with a pencil, it might be enough to knock you unconscious.
I mean, Brandon Cutler has like water that he sprays down. Yeah. But yeah, no. Then they went up the ramp, and then to me came out of nowhere. He beats the shit out of Chavo.
Well, it seemed like he was trying to figure out how he won, what happened to Pac, and they're talking to him as he's leaving, and he's still getting his bearings. And basically, his guy is telling him that Chavo came in and whacked Pac, and that's how he was able to get the pin. And he's like,
and then Pac,
he's asking Chavo, and Chavo's like, "Yeah, I helped you out. I made sure you got the win." And Andrade was like, "That is not how I wanted to win." And he just decks Chavo, and he leaves him. And we didn't mention that the Lucha Brothers came out to help Pac win from all this. So and then he just leaves him to the Lucha Brothers' mercy. Lucha Brothers super kick Chavo, throw him in the ring. Pac snaps on the brutalizer on the Chavo and won't take it off for anybody because he's pissed. Yeah. But this was a great match. This is the Andrade that we've been promised.
This is so much better. I'm sorry, it's not because Andrade is stupid, but that stupid Matt Sydal match with him, because it was like, that was like, are you guys even really showcasing Andrade with that match? This match showcased Andrade.
This was the Andrade we've been promised. This is the Andrade that when he said he was coming to AEW, this is the one we thought we were going to see.
Flipping plancha, like this twirling,
like sideways twirling plancha.
Like,
well, he did like a flip over the top rope DDT into the edge of the apron. That I was like, this is great.
Put the hardest part of the ring. So that's this was the match that I was looking forward to see from Andrade, and of course Pac was great because Pac's always. So yeah, this was really good, and I wasn't disappointed with the finish. I think it sets up a lot of things. I think it sets up a huge rumor, which
do we want to spoil that rumor or just keep it in the rumor box? Right, the rumor which has been rumoring a lot since the end of July, rumoring even more
at least
since Triple Mania, that when Ric Flair showed up to corner Andrade at Triple Mania, that there may be a new manager in the works for Andrade.
I mean, he's been running through managers like crazy now.
Well, I don't think he was supposed to run through. I think they realized. Well, from what I have guessed, what I've heard is that the original plan was that he was going to come in with Thea Trinidad, and they were going to redo what they had been doing in WWE. And then at the last minute, she went back to WWE. So they were like, we got to do something else. So like, Vicky's here now. Let's just go with Vicky. That's like a good, and we'll see what happens. And then when it became clear that wasn't working, like, all right, let's go with Chavo. That's a better match. And that was going to be probably like a long-term solution until someone much better became available, and like, oh yeah, no, let's do that instead. Because if you can get Ric Flair, go get Ric Flair.
I mean, this is obviously setting up for that, right? Or is that
no? It's obviously setting up for that.
Okay.
If he just goes off and he's trying to be on his own, okay, fine. But if they don't bring in Ric Flair after doing all this, I'd be like, what'd you waste all of our time with that other stuff?
Yeah, just like him with his manservant, like that'd be like, come on, exactly. So I'm looking forward to that too. That's another name that's on the horizon for us. So and especially
the show just keeps changing.
And I don't know, like, so is this going to continue, or do they do separate things? Is a
I think they'll go off into separate things. I think Death Triangle is going to go. I think what we'll see is Death Triangle will start new feuds, and Andrade will start new feuds, and that'll be interesting.
I think there was potential for this to be a longer storyline, because with the whole, like, are you going to join us or not? But it seems like they really leaned into that too much, and they basically just went with this.
Well, now the Lucha Brothers have won the tag titles. What on earth does? I mean, Andrade's whole pitch was, "I will make you champions," but they've won the tag titles. So what on earth does Andrade have for them?
When we previewed the pay-per-view, I was thinking that there was going to be some synergy between those two matches because of the storylines being in play. But when that got moved off the card, you're kind of like, oh, well. And then I saw when Lucha Brothers became champions, I was like, well, then I guess that's I guess that's it for the Andrade Pac story.
I guess so, yeah. What else? They don't need anything else. So, and they should. They keep talking about wanting to bring in a lot more guys from AAA, and that'd be great. Although I'd like, it'd be really good to see Andrade against some of the other guys who are on especially in TV matches, who are on the card, would be a mixing of style, like redo the Andrade Kenny Omega match. Andrade and a partner against the Young Bucks would be great with the right partner. But if they could bring in like Laredo Kid and Hijo del Vikingo from AAA,
that Laredo Kid on a couple,
would be great. They've had Laredo Kid on a couple times, and he's been on Impact recently, so he's coming into the country.
Yeah. He's in the system.
Yeah, he's in the system, and he keeps and Andrade has like an extended CMML family that have been bouncing around Ring of Honor and other areas that he's talking about wanting to.
I thought he's a CMLL and AAA don't like, or CMLL like hates AAA and doesn't like hire anybody from them. So it does. They have both working relationships.
Well, so he has like they don't. What it is he has a bunch of guys that when he was in CMLL were like his guys, and they since quit and all went to AAA and Ring of Honor. And like it's like Roosh and Dragon Lee and Bestia Del Ring and the second Mystico.
CMLL won't hire AAA guy, but AAA will hire CMLL.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, 100%. Yeah. Because AAA is not crazy.
Yeah.
Because AAA is not crazy. So, and he's talking about, and there's these rumors that he really wants those guys to come over and work within AEW, which would be great. Except Roosh refuses to lose to anyone, but still the matches would be great.
Yeah. Also, I would like them to at least get some more TV time. I mean, it's almost getting to be a saturated roster if it's not already, to tell you the truth. So
it's saturated roster,
like,
but maybe you can still handle it.
Maybe just let's work things out with the current roster before you start bringing in tons new name after new name. So like another new wave of new names.
What you probably end up getting is a bit Japan style, where you're gonna get like a lot of tag matches on the TV product that lead to the big singles matches, and a lot of the big singles matches have to happen in pay-per-view. If they ever get to that though, then it'll work, but they're gonna have to start doing more pay-per-views per year. They'll start doing like 8 or 10 or something. Which they could do. I know they don't want to because that'd be down, but they could. They got a big enough roster now. I mean, they started this weekend. They had the recording, the tapings for Dark Orlando. They taped 6 hours worth of Dark over the course of one day. So I'm hoping that's for like 4 days worth of Dark. Because if I turn it on to YouTube on Tuesday and it's a 6 hour Dark, no, I'm pretty sure that's for a bunch of I'm out of here. No, I think that's for a bunch of 1 hour episodes or 70 minute
like
episodes.
game show scheduling kind of. It's like just take a bunch like a month at once.
Because they'll still be doing Elevation with the regular shows. But that was a great match, the 3-way, and then we finally got our blow off, our main event for Rampage: Brian Pillman versus Max Caster, which I think the first time they've ever faced off in a singles match. And this kind of blows off that very, very long feud they were doing on Dark that got shelved when Caster had to go away for a little bit. So now they were able to, because they do all this stuff and they do storylines even on Dark, and they do have those move into the TV programming as needed. They were able to reach right back to the guy, like, all right, we're gonna have the blow off match for these two guys. And it wasn't like great. They're both young wrestlers and but they have a lot of charisma.
It did the job
it did the job it needed to do, and you could get into it. And it was a lot of fun. And they made Pillman look like the conquering hero babyface he needed to look.
And then they even had Mox come out at the end, and Cincinnati upped the crowd some more. So
And apparently they sang the theme song for Skyline Chili as the show was going off the air.
It's a beautiful city when you drive through it, but like a lot part of that country, just because it looks good on the outside doesn't mean it's good on the inside. But
so what you're saying is we're never going to have any subscribers to our channel from Cincinnati.
I mean, Cincinnati, Detroit, these cities. At least I like Pittsburgh. We're fine with that. But yeah, I'm sorry, Cincinnati. Prove me wrong. Take me out and Skyline chili with your goddamn chocolate and spaghetti. It's meat sauce. If you put chili on spaghetti, it's meat sauce.
Only if it's got a lot of tomato.
Texas, we had this argument of whether it had beans or not. It's like, oh, do you put it on spaghetti or not? Like, you even said that in Texas, it shoots you in the face or something. Well, now, and it'd probably be legal to do it now. That's the sad part. But yeah.
It probably would be legal to do. We made everything else legal. All right. Oh my goodness, seemed like there was like a never-ending amount of news, and
it was a big. I mean, with AEW, because AEW keeps making waves, so they keep making news for us to talk about.
Well, so the rest of September is going to be a giant September. They've got the Newark show, which is going to be big, which is going to be like their biggest crowd until the end of the month. We get the Arthur Ashe show, which is going to be almost 20,000 people. They have more people for that than you have for a lot of pay-per-views. That's going to be a giant show.
It's also nice in this day with day and age of the pandemic that they're doing one in an outdoor stadium. So that's awesome.
That's nice. And apparently they're coming back to New Jersey in December. They've been pushing a show that's going to Long Island. They're going to do a Long Island show in New Jersey because MJS been out pushing it a lot recently.
Yeah. Well, where's Taz from Red Hook, right?
Yeah, Red Hook. Taz has been pushing it too because all the Long Island boys have.
They named his son after the city.
People love Hook.
Justin Bieber.
Justin Bieber. Man, he takes those things personally. Come on, his son's got that much hair.
Like no one even cares about Justin Bieber anymore. Like 10 years ago, that's kind of an insult. Now it's just like it's funny, but it's not anything to get mad about funny. And so that's actually what made the whole thing great, right? Like if you actually you feel bad, but the fact that he reacted to nothing, that's the best part.
Yeah. So yeah, lots of big matches coming up. Bryan Danielson, CM Punk, Adam Cole. You're gonna see him wrestle for the first time on Dynamite this week.
Right, injecting some life in there. And of course, CM Punk, coming back. So, and people aren't getting lost in the mix. You're still promoting guys. I mean, you're still seeing matches from Hollywood, matches from Dan Martin. So AEW, even though you're going to see, and for good reason. I mean, there is a good theory to putting on behind your own guys every time, but we really want to just put on the best product every time.
Right.
And your own guys are part of that, which hopefully they are, because that means you've been doing your job these last 2 years. Then that's fine. But you just still want to put on the best show. And if it's a homegrown guy or someone who just came to WWE, whatever. I mean, it's not like these guys are just getting these contracts because they're WWE names. They're getting these contracts because they're good. Otherwise, I think Strowman would have a contract by now.
Right.
You know? So like these guys getting that coming to AEW because they're fucking hot names. That's why.
Yeah. And AEW has never felt hot. Yeah, exactly. And they're making everything means more. I mean, AEW has never felt hotter than it feels right now.
And it's a point where everybody on Twitter is like, man, like ex-WWE people, even Mick Foley called out like Vince, like, how is this happening?
Although like, what are you doing?
Virgil calls out Vince because I'm like, you're Virgil. So
yeah, nobody's gonna listen to you, but they'll listen when Mick Foley says, like, WWE, you've lost track of your product. Yeah. And WWE's there going, bring me more giant guys. Bring me Brock. How many things can we get Brock signed up for? Let's have another Goldberg match.
I don't know if you saw this ticker came across our broadcast, but they lost another big guy with Samoa Joe again going down to injury, so you have to give up the belt.
Yeah. Oh, did he really? He just won it.
It just came across the screen like 10 minutes ago.
Man. And he had a really good match with Karrion Kross.
That guy cannot catch a break.
He cannot catch a break. Man, I feel bad.
Too, but he needs to. I mean, this is obviously a sign that when
it may be time to. I know he could be if they don't want him commentating on WWE, they can have him be a commentator for NXT or something. I don't know, but that is too bad.
Like one of the if you're going to keep the old guys there, he's definitely one of the better old guys to keep on there because he's so much to teach like the new guys. And everything. Yeah. So a big blow for them. Yeah. So it's another, but I don't think he's going to come to the AEW anytime.
No, I think that window's closed. I think if he was going to do that, it would have been when WWE let him go the first time, especially if he can't wrestle, because they got a lot of guys on commentary now.
This sucks. That you always wanted that guy to like have a run in WWE, but just never got the chance because of his body. Yeah. It's not that he even wrestles a really. I mean, he does wrestle. I mean, he's not like Ray Phoenix or anything like that. It's just an injury thing.
Yeah, it just happens.
Yeah, I mean, I lived through Yao Ming, so I get it.
It just happens.
Yeah.
Well, that sucks for NXT, and it's going to really suck for when they start the rebrand, which happens this week, and we find out what that actually looks like. If anybody who's still watching it, I don't know, but it's not for me. That's all right, because AEW is as good as it has been, and I don't ever
pretty much going the other direction creatively. So
pretty much. All right. Well, we will be here to watch all of it and discuss all of it, as long as none of that includes a 6-hour dark, because that's probably where I do draw the line. But otherwise, we will be here to watch all of it and enjoy all of it, and we'll bring you guys along for the ride. And for AER, I am Josh Starnes,
and I'm Shamik Ghosh.
All right, cue the music.